If you've ever wondered why your path feels heavier, why life keeps testing you when all you want is peace, or why the storms in your life never seem to pass, pause for a moment. What if the pain wasn't a punishment but preparation? What if the struggle was not a sign of failure but a signal that you are being shaped into something stronger than you've ever been? As the great Buddha once wisely said, endurance is one of the most difficult disciplines, but it is to the one who endures that the final victory comes. This is not just philosophy, it's a truth lived by those who walk through fire and still rise. Buddhism doesn't teach us to escape pain, it teaches us to understand it, to see every hardship as a sacred step toward awakening. And once you begin to see that nothing in your life has been wasted, not the heartbreak, not the silence, not even the moments you thought would break you, you begin to understand the quiet truth behind it all. It was always meant to be. 1. The wound is where the light enters. At the core of Buddhist teachings lies a gentle yet powerful truth. Suffering is not something to run from. It is something to understand, to sit with, and to grow through. It is easy to believe that when life hurts us, something has gone wrong. That perhaps we have made a mistake, lost our way, or are being punished. But in reality, pain is not always a sign of punishment. It is often a sign of transformation. When something in your life breaks, when your heart is shattered by loss, betrayal, disappointment, or fear, it may feel like the end of the road. But in the quiet wisdom of Buddhism, that very breaking is often the beginning of something sacred. It is not just a collapse, it is a cracking open. The wound you carry is not simply a scar to be ashamed of or hidden away. It is a passage, a doorway, a sacred opening through which the light of deeper awareness, clarity, and truth can finally enter your being. When you are wounded, you are forced to stop, to look within, and to examine the things that comfort once allowed you to avoid. The pain draws you inward. It reveals what you've ignored for too long, emotions you've suppressed, truths you've avoided, and parts of yourself you've never truly met. The wound pulls these hidden parts of you to the surface, not to harm you, but to heal you through honest confrontation. And as difficult as it may be, the more you sit with that pain, without numbing it, without running away, the more you begin to see clearly. You start to notice things others overlook. You feel the weight of other people's pain. You become more present with life's small moments. A sunrise feels more sacred. A simple hug feels like a miracle. You begin to live not from the surface of things, but from the quiet depth that pain carved into your soul. This is the beginning of awakening. Buddhism teaches us not to fear pain, but to honor it as the beginning of spiritual insight. Because those who have been broken open by life often emerge with hearts that are no longer hard and closed, but soft and deeply compassionate. A person who has suffered greatly begins to see themselves in others. They begin to understand that beneath everyone's smiles there is a story, and beneath every act of unkindness there is a hidden wound. This understanding leads to true compassion, not a shallow form of kindness, but the kind that is rooted in personal experience, in silence, in sleepless nights, in battles fought in private. When life has broken you, but you still choose to rise, not with anger, but with openness, you begin to embody a strength that is quiet, steady, and unshakable. That strength is not the kind that boasts or demands attention. It is the kind that holds space for others. It listens. It doesn't need to prove anything, because it knows pain, it knows darkness, and it has chosen light anyway. So the next time you feel broken, remember this: your wound is not your downfall. It is your entry point into something more meaningful, more aware, more whole. The light that enters through your suffering does not just illuminate your life, it transforms it. And once you have been touched by that light, you cannot go back to who you were. You now carry a depth that cannot be taken from you. You carry the wisdom of experience, the strength of vulnerability, and the quiet power of someone who has faced themselves and made peace with the parts they used to hide. The wound, though painful, is a sacred invitation to become more fully alive, not in spite of your suffering, but because of it. 2. The mountain wasn't put there to stop you, it was put there to make you climb. One of the most misunderstood aspects of life is the belief that obstacles are meant to harm us, that when something blocks our path, it's a sign that we should stop, turn around, or give up. But in Buddhism, the presence of a mountain in your way is not seen as a punishment. It is seen as part of the path itself. The mountain exists not to defeat you, but to develop you. Its steep sides, its unpredictable trails, its cold winds and difficult climbs, they are not errors in the design of your life. They are exactly what you need in order to become who you are truly meant to be. When you come face to face with a challenge that seems too big, too heavy, too impossible to move through, it's natural to feel overwhelmed. But the truth is, that feeling is not a sign of failure. It is the first step toward transformation. The mountain is calling something out of you that you may not even know is there. It is waking up your strength, your patience, your determination, and your awareness. Because it is only when we are pushed beyond our comfort that we discover the deeper parts of ourselves, the parts that can endure, that can adapt, and that can rise again, even when everything feels heavy. Every obstacle that appears in your life gives you an opportunity to shift your perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Buddhist path invites you to ask, "What is this trying to show me? What is this trying to build in me?" When you begin to look at your struggles through this lens, something profound changes inside you. You stop running from difficulty and you begin to approach it with mindful presence. You slow down, you breathe, you take one step at a time, and even though the summit may feel distant, you keep moving, not out of desperation, but out of quiet trust that every step is shaping you in a way that ease never could. The climb itself becomes the practice. You begin to understand that progress is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it feels invisible. Sometimes you walk for months through fog, through rain, through uncertainty, and only later do you look back and see how far you've come. The mountain forces you to stay present. It teaches you to listen to your breath, to be gentle with your pace, and to trust the process even when the destination is unclear. And in that practice, you begin to embody patience, not the passive kind, but the strong, grounded patience that says, "I will keep going, not because it is easy, but because this is the path I have been given." And then, one day, after all the doubt, the struggle and the silence, you find yourself standing at the top, not because the mountain moved, but because you grew strong enough to rise. And in that moment, everything changes. You no longer see the mountain as your enemy. You see it as your teacher. You understand that without its presence, you would have never uncovered the quiet power within you. You would have never developed the resilience that now lives in your bones. You would have never awakened the calm strength that allows you to face the storms of life without flinching. The climb gave you more than victory. It gave you inner clarity. It showed you who you are when things are hard, when no one is watching, and when giving up would have been easier. And now, even when new mountains appear, you no longer fear them, because you know that the mountain was never placed in your way to stop you. It was placed in your life to make you rise, to make you still, to make you whole, and most of all, to reveal the truth that you were never too weak. You simply needed the climb to uncover your strength. 3. Your karma isn't punishment. It's your path to liberation. Karma is a word that many people hear, repeat, and even fear, yet so few truly understand what it means. It's often mistaken as a kind of cosmic punishment, as if every painful moment in your life is a result of something wrong you did in the past, or a cruel balancing scale of suffering and reward. But Buddhism teaches something far more compassionate and empowering. Karma is not about vengeance. It's not a divine threat waiting to hurt you when you slip. It is the natural unfolding of cause and effect. It is the law of action, intention, and energy. Every thought you hold, every word you speak, every action you take, each one plants a seed, and those seeds shape the reality you experience over time. But here is the most important truth. Karma is not fixed. It is not a life sentence written in stone. It is fluid, ever-changing, and constantly influenced by your present choices. Your current awareness, your present mindfulness, has the power to shift the momentum of your life. You are not the helpless victim of your past, nor are you doomed to repeat your mistakes forever. Karma is not there to trap you. It is there to guide you, to mirror your patterns, and to show you where you still have the power to change. So when life becomes difficult, when you find yourself repeating painful relationships, facing similar struggles again and again, or feeling stuck in situations that seem unfair, it's not because the universe is cruel. It's because your soul is being shown a reflection of what still needs your attention. Sometimes you are carrying the emotional weight of choices made long ago, not just in this life, but in the echo of lives before. Other times you are holding beliefs and behaviors passed down through generations, rooted so deeply that you don't even realize they're there. These invisible patterns shape your perception, your reactions, and your experience of the world. Karma brings them to the surface, not to shame you, but to invite you into the sacred work of healing. Painful karma is not punishment. It is purification. It is the soul's call to break free from the cycles that bind it. When you choose to meet your karma with awareness, instead of resistance, you begin to transform it. You stop blaming others. You stop running from discomfort. You begin to see that every situation, especially the difficult ones, is asking you a question. Will you choose the same path again, or will you awaken to a new way of being? Each moment becomes a choice, a chance to plant a better seed, a chance to respond with kindness instead of anger, with patience instead of urgency, with truth instead of fear. And as you choose differently, your energy shifts, your path begins to clear. You start to notice small changes at first. A little more peace in your heart, a little more clarity in your thoughts, a little less chaos in your surroundings. These are signs that your karma is healing, that the fire of suffering is giving way to the stillness of liberation. You are no longer a prisoner of your past. You are a conscious creator of your future. This is the power of Buddhist practice. It brings your attention to the present moment because that is where karma lives and breathes. The present moment is where you break the chain. It's where you say, I will not carry this pain forward. I will not pass this anger to the next generation. I will not act from fear any longer. And in that decision, your past loses its grip. Your pain loses its echo. Your karma becomes your teacher, not your tormentor. So instead of fearing your karma, listen to it. Let it speak to you through your experiences. Let it show you where your heart still needs healing, where your habits need changing, and where your soul is ready to evolve. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Prepared for peace, for wisdom, for freedom from cycles that have trapped you for too long. And with every mindful breath, with every compassionate action, you step closer to liberation, not as an escape, but as a return to your truest self. Your karma is not a wall. It is a doorway. Walk through it with grace. 4. Suffering is the mirror of the soul's depth. In a world that celebrates speed, surface-level happiness, and external success, suffering is often seen as something shameful or to be avoided at all costs. We're taught that if we hurt, something must be wrong with us, that if we're struggling, we must be failing. But the wisdom of Buddhism tells a very different story, one that doesn't fear suffering, but honors it as the sacred mirror of the soul. Because it is through suffering, and only through suffering, that the deepest parts of your being are revealed. Think about it. When life is smooth, when things are easy, we often drift. We live on autopilot. We move through our days without much thought, reacting to the world around us with little awareness. But when suffering enters, when we are shaken by grief, heartbreak, illness, betrayal or loneliness, it's as if the lights are suddenly turned on inside us. The distractions fall away, the noise quiets down, and we are left face to face with ourselves, raw and unfiltered. There, in that uncomfortable silence, we begin to notice truths we never saw before. We begin to feel emotions we've long buried. We begin to question the life we were living, the masks we were wearing, and the things we once thought mattered. This is not weakness, it is awakening. Suffering breaks the illusion that life is something we can fully control. It reminds us of impermanence, of change, of the fragile nature of existence. But rather than being depressing, this realization is deeply sacred, because in that awareness, a new kind of beauty is born, one that isn't based on external validation or temporary comfort, but on a deep inner knowing. When you suffer, you begin to understand the suffering of others. You begin to recognize the silent pain behind people's smiles, the quiet desperation in their voices, and the invisible battles they carry. And because you've been there, because you've felt that weight, you become more gentle, more present, more human. This is why the most compassionate souls are often the ones who have suffered the most. Not because they're better than others, but because they've been stripped of the illusions that keep the heart closed. They no longer judge as quickly. They no longer speak without thinking. They no longer chase things that don't bring peace. They've sat in the fire, and in that fire they found something unshakable. In Buddhism, suffering is not an enemy, it is a teacher. It teaches us humility because we realize we are not invincible. It teaches us patience because healing takes time. It teaches us gratitude because even a small moment of relief feels like a miracle after long periods of pain. But most of all, it teaches us depth, a depth of understanding, a depth of presence, a depth of heart. The kind of depth that allows you to sit beside someone in silence and still offer comfort. The kind of depth that doesn't need to fix others, but can simply hold space for them to be as they are. And the more you sit with your suffering, not trying to escape it or suppress it, but allowing it to move through you like a river, the more you realize it is not here to destroy you. It is here to cleanse you, to soften the sharp edges of your personality, to melt the pride that keeps you distant, to dissolve the false stories you've told yourself about who you need to be. Through suffering, you return to the core of your being, naked, open, aware. And from that place you begin to rebuild, not into the person you used to be, but into someone wiser, calmer, and more connected to what truly matters. So the next time you find yourself in the middle of pain, try not to ask, "Why me?" Instead ask, "What is this showing me about myself, about life, about the world?" Use your pain as a mirror, not to judge yourself, but to see yourself more clearly. Trust that what you are feeling now is not the end of your story, it is the deepening of it, a sacred descent that will eventually become the foundation for your rise. Because the soul does not grow in shallow waters, it grows in depth, in darkness, in stillness, and suffering, painful as it is, takes you there. It is not a curse. It is a calling to come home to yourself in a way you never have before. 5. Letting go is not giving up, it's coming home. In the quiet teachings of Buddhism, one of the most profound and life-changing realizations is this: letting go is not the same as giving up. In fact, the two could not be more different. Giving up is what we do when we are tired, hopeless, or lost in despair. It's the surrender of our will to pain. But letting go, that is something much deeper, far more powerful, and infinitely more beautiful. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the highest form of inner maturity. It is a sacred return to your natural state, a coming home to your peace, your presence, and your truth. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you turn cold or close your heart. It does not mean you walk away from life or abandon your responsibilities. What it means is that you release your grip on the illusions that are making you suffer. It means you no longer cling to what was never meant to stay. You stop trying to control things that are beyond your reach, people's opinions, their actions, the past, the future, and the outcomes of your efforts. You begin to understand that the more tightly you hold on to what must change, the more pain you create within yourself. So many people carry the weight of expectations that were never real. We hold on to people who've already left us emotionally. We hold on to dreams that no longer match who we've become. We hold on to regrets that cannot be rewritten and to fears about a future that hasn't even arrived. And in doing so, we stretch ourselves thin, exhaust our hearts, and lose our ability to be truly present. Buddhism invites us to recognize this pattern, not to judge ourselves for it, but to gently see it for what it is, a natural habit of the mind trying to find safety in the unstable. But the truth is, safety does not come from control. Peace does not come from having all the answers. Freedom does not come from certainty. These things come from surrender, from softening your grip, from trusting the flow, and from allowing yourself to release what is not in alignment with your highest self. Letting go doesn't mean you don't feel grief. It means you let grief move through you without resistance. It means you cry when you need to, rest when your soul is weary, and rise again. Not with bitterness, but with grace. When you let go, you make space. Space for clarity, space for healing, space for something new to enter. You stop trying to fill the emptiness with distractions, and you begin to sit with it. You begin to notice the subtle wisdom in silence, the peace in stillness, the comfort in simplicity. You start to find beauty in the present moment without needing it to be anything other than what it is. And slowly, the ache of letting go transforms into the calm of returning to yourself, to your breath, to the rhythm of life as it naturally unfolds. So many of us confuse attachment with love. We believe that holding on tighter means we care more, but in reality, the deepest form of love is the one that lets others be free. That allows people to walk their own path even if it leads away from us. That blesses what was, accepts what is, and trusts what will be. Love is not about possession. It is about presence. And presence is only possible when we are no longer caught in the grip of control. Letting go also means forgiving, not just others, but yourself. Forgiving the mistakes you made when you didn't know better. Forgiving the times you stayed too long or left too soon. Forgiving the versions of yourself that were still learning how to survive. When you let go, you are not erasing your past. You are integrating it. You are saying, yes, that happened. Yes, it hurt. But I choose to no longer let it define me. And in that choice, you reclaim your power. You rise from victimhood into presence. You stop dragging your old pain into the new chapters of your life. And perhaps most importantly, letting go teaches you that you are enough without all the things you were once clinging to. You realize that your worth is not tied to someone's validation, to a job title, to a relationship, or to a version of success defined by the world. You begin to see yourself not as someone who is constantly lacking, but as someone who is whole, even in moments of uncertainty. You stop chasing peace in the future and begin to experience it now, in the quiet moments, in the simple joys, in the act of just being. Letting go is a sacred act. It is the path of the spiritual warrior, not the one who fights to hold on, but the one who has the courage to release. To release the weight that was never yours to carry, to release the stories that no longer serve you, to release the fear of what might happen, and to open yourself to what already is. It is not a defeat, it is a return to presence, a return to love, a return to the deep, still, unshakable peace that lives within you beneath all the noise. So the next time your heart is heavy from holding on, ask yourself gently, What am I clinging to that is asking to be released? And then breathe, trust, let go, not because you're giving up, but because you're coming home. 6. The strongest souls are forged in silence. There is a quiet place within you, a place untouched by noise, untouched by the chaos of the world, a place that doesn't shout or demand attention, but waits patiently for you to return. This inner sanctuary often goes unnoticed when life is loud and full, when we're surrounded by movement, conversation, distractions and plans. But when everything begins to fall away, when friends grow distant, when the noise dies down, when the applause disappears, when the world no longer mirrors back to you who you think you are left with something that many fear: silence. But in Buddhism, silence is not something to be feared or escaped. It is something to be embraced. It is in silence that the strongest souls are born. Because silence is not emptiness. It is not absence. It is presence in its most sacred form. It is the space in which truth reveals itself, without noise, without opinion, without distortion. Silence doesn't just sit around doing nothing. It works on you, it carves you, it purifies you. It removes the layers you've built to protect yourself from the world, layers of ego, of fear, of needing to prove, of wanting to be seen, of constantly striving for validation. When life leads you into silence, when you are alone, uncertain, broken or grieving, it may feel like a punishment at first. You may look around and think you've been abandoned, forgotten or left behind. But what is actually happening is far more sacred. You are being drawn inward. The world is no longer enough to distract you from yourself, and so life gently, or sometimes suddenly, closes the doors to everything external so that you have no choice but to face your inner world. This is where transformation begins. It is in this silence that you meet your real self, not the one shaped by other people's expectations or defined by your role in society, but the self that exists beneath all of that. You begin to hear your own thoughts clearly, perhaps for the first time. You begin to notice how much noise you were carrying inside, how many false beliefs you've absorbed, how much emotional weight you've been silently holding on to. And without the pressure to perform, to please or to be seen, you slowly start shedding what doesn't belong to you. You soften, you unravel, you become still, and in that stillness you begin to heal. Not because you force it, but because healing is what silence naturally does. Silence has a way of revealing the strength you didn't know you had. Because when no one is there to applaud you, to comfort you, or to offer answers, you discover the quiet strength that lives within your own breath. You learn to sit with pain without running from it. You learn to observe your fears without collapsing into them. You learn to comfort yourself in the moments when no one else can. And through that, you become whole, not dependent on outside validation, not attached to outcomes, but steady, rooted, self-aware. This is why the greatest spiritual growth often happens in solitude. The Buddhist path is filled with stories of monks and seekers who left behind the noise of the world to live in caves, forests or mountains, not because they were escaping, but because they were returning to something purer. In that silence, they met their own minds, they met their own suffering, and they stayed with it. They didn't numb it, they didn't fight it, they breathed through it. And in doing so, they emerged with a kind of strength that does not waver. A strength that cannot be shaken by the winds of the world because it is not dependent on anything external. You don't need to become a monk to discover this. Life will give you your own moments of silence. It may come through heartbreak, loss, transition, or a season of being alone. And when it does, remember that this is not a detour, it is the path. It is your invitation to go deeper than you've ever gone before, to stop filling every moment with noise, and instead to listen to the soundless guidance within. The silence will speak to you, not in words, but in feelings, in clarity, in inner knowing. And what it gives you is something no one else can. A direct connection to the wisdom of your own soul. You begin to realize that you don't always need to be understood because you understand yourself. You don't always need to explain because peace no longer requires permission. You stop reacting and you start responding. You stop defending yourself and you start simply being. You develop what Buddhists call equanimity, a calm, unshakable mind. You don't become hard or numb. You become deeply soft, but with a core of steel. Your emotions still move through you, but they no longer control you. Your storms still come, but they no longer drown you. The strongest souls are not those who shout the loudest, who fight the hardest, or who are constantly seen. The strongest souls are those who have faced themselves in the silence, who have wept in solitude and kept going, who have asked life's hardest questions and been brave enough to sit with the silence that followed. They are the ones who can walk through the world with a peaceful presence that says, "I do not need to prove myself, because I have already met myself." So if you are in a season of silence right now, if the world has gone quiet, if the people have faded, if the direction is unclear, do not rush to fill the space. Do not panic. Do not numb. Instead, stay, breathe, listen. There is something being shaped in you that cannot be rushed. There is a strength being born in you that cannot be seen yet, but that will carry you for the rest of your life. Trust the silence. It is not empty. It is sacred ground. It is the forge where your soul becomes unshakable. 7. Everything you've been through is preparing you for what you asked for. There's something deeply mysterious about the way life responds to our inner longing. We often sit in silence, sometimes without even realizing it, and send out quiet prayers from the heart, wishes for peace, strength, love, clarity, and healing. Sometimes we speak these desires aloud. Sometimes they rise as soft whispers beneath the chaos of our thoughts. And sometimes they remain as nameless yearnings, just a feeling that something needs to shift, something needs to change, something needs to come into alignment. But rarely do we understand the sacred process that follows. Because when the universe responds, it doesn't always give us what we asked for in the form we expected. It gives us the experiences that will prepare us to receive it fully. This is the paradox that Buddhism helps us to see with gentle clarity, that what feels like life falling apart is often life being rearranged in your favor. What feels like a closed door is a redirection towards something more authentic. What feels like loss is the beginning of deep spiritual gain. But because we are human and we naturally seek comfort and familiarity, we tend to misread the signs. When things break, we assume we are being punished. When people leave, we believe we are unworthy. When we suffer, we feel forgotten. But none of this is the truth. The truth is much softer and much more profound. Everything you've been through is not against you. It's for you. It's shaping you. It's polishing you. It's preparing you to become the person who is capable of living the life you asked for. Consider this. You ask for strength. And instead of receiving it immediately, you're given situations that feel impossible. You're placed in emotional terrain that pushes you, stretches you, and brings you face to face with your own breaking point. Why? Because strength is not something handed to you. It's something that must be awakened from within. You don't grow stronger by hearing words of encouragement. You grow stronger when you have no choice but to keep going, when no one is clapping, when the path is dark, when the world seems indifferent, and yet you rise anyway. You ask for peace, and life begins to stir up every bit of chaos that was quietly sitting beneath the surface. Old wounds come to light, conflicts emerge, patterns repeat themselves louder than before. Why? Because real peace is not the absence of noise. It's the ability to remain centered within the noise. And the only way to develop that kind of peace is to face the very things that disturb your heart and learn to breathe through them without losing yourself. Peace is not given. It is earned through awareness, acceptance, and letting go of control. You ask for love, and life removes everything that is not love. People who are not aligned with your truth begin to leave. Relationships that once made you feel secure start to unravel. Emotional crutches you once depended on disappear. At first, this feels cruel, lonely, unfair. But in truth, life is making space. It is helping you become the kind of person who no longer settles for half-love or conditions. It is teaching you to love yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a deeply grounded, self-respecting way. Only from that foundation can real, lasting, expansive love grow. You ask for purpose, and life brings you seasons of confusion. You wander, you try and fail, you feel lost, you doubt yourself, you question everything. But this wandering is not meaningless. It is the unlearning, it is the sacred in-between. Because purpose is not a destination, it is a becoming. And the person you are becoming is not someone who chases approval or seeks to impress. You are becoming someone who can walk your path with honesty, humility, and heart, even when it doesn't look like anyone else's. All of this, every tear, every breakdown, every detour, every disappointment, is not random. It is the curriculum your soul signed up for. It is your custom-designed journey, leading you step by step toward a life of authenticity, alignment, and peace. But that journey requires trust. Deep trust. The kind of trust that doesn't depend on answers or guarantees. The kind of trust that says, I don't understand this right now, but I choose to believe that this pain has a purpose. The kind of trust that is willing to walk through the dark not because the light has disappeared, but because the light now comes from within. In Buddhism, this unfolding is seen as part of your karma, not karma as punishment, but karma as the unfolding of energy, the law of cause and effect. What you are going through now may be the unraveling of energies you didn't even create in this life. You may be carrying patterns, stories, and wounds from generations before you, and yet, by walking your path with mindfulness, with compassion, and with presence, you are healing not just yourself, but your entire lineage. You are interrupting cycles, you are doing sacred work, and that is why it feels so heavy sometimes, because it is. But no part of it is wasted. That heartbreak you thought would destroy you. It taught you how to sit with pain, how to keep breathing when everything hurt, how to find beauty in a sunrise, even with tears in your eyes. That job you lost, the one you built your identity around, it forced you to ask who you really are without titles or applause. It reminded you that your worth is not tied to what you produce. That betrayal that broke your trust, it taught you to trust yourself again, to listen to your gut, to honor your boundaries. That season of loneliness that felt endless. It brought you into deeper contact with your own soul. It taught you to enjoy your own company, to walk through the world without needing to be filled by others. All of this is preparation, gentle, fierce, precise preparation. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And the more you begin to see your life through this lens, the more peace you will begin to feel, even in the middle of the storm. You will stop seeing your challenges as curses and begin to see them as invitations. Invitations to rise, to let go, to begin again, to walk more gently, to listen more deeply, to live more fully. You ask to grow. Growth doesn't come in comfort. It comes in surrender. You ask to heal. Healing doesn't come by pretending everything is okay. It comes by sitting with the wound, breathing through the ache, and allowing yourself to feel. You asked to awaken. Awakening doesn't come through knowledge alone. It comes through direct experience, the kind that breaks you open so that the truth can finally enter. So trust what's happening, trust what has happened, and trust what's to come. Not blindly, but with the quiet knowing that your life is not a mistake. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And everything you've been through, every single moment, has been shaping you into the person you are destined to be. And when the day comes that you finally step into the life that aligns with your soul, when you feel peace without reason, when love flows without fear, when your purpose feels like breath, you will look back on the struggle not with bitterness, but with deep reverence. You'll say, I understand now. It didn't come easy. It came sacred. Because everything you've been through was preparing you, not for the life your mind imagined, but for the life your soul always knew was yours. 8. Pain is not the end. It's the beginning of a new awareness. When pain enters your life, it doesn't ask for permission. It arrives quietly, sometimes suddenly, and sometimes gradually, but always with a force that feels impossible to ignore. At first, it feels like an ending of the life you once knew, the joy you once carried, the hope you once had. Pain disrupts everything familiar. It interrupts your routines, clouds your mind, tightens your chest, and makes the future feel uncertain. You begin to question everything: your path, your choices, your worth, even your purpose. And in the early stages, it's easy to feel lost, as if something has been stolen from you, as if the best parts of your life have been sealed away behind a door you can no longer open. But in Buddhism, pain is not seen as something to fear or escape. It is not the final stop on the road of life. It is a threshold, a sacred gate. And the deeper truth is this: pain, though overwhelming, is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a new awareness, one that could not have been awakened in the absence of suffering. Pain, when met with presence, becomes the teacher that no book, no lecture, and no other person could ever provide. Because pain doesn't just touch the mind, it shakes the soul awake. This awakening doesn't happen all at once. It begins slowly, in the silent moments when you sit with your sorrow, in the quiet hours of reflection when no one else is around, in the pauses between breaths when you're no longer running or hiding. You begin to notice that pain changes the way you see the world. It humbles you, it softens you, it breaks down the walls you once built around your heart, walls you thought were protecting you, but which were really keeping you from fully living. And as those walls begin to crumble, something unexpected begins to rise, a deeper awareness of life itself. You start to notice things you once ignored: the sound of the wind through the trees, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the tenderness in someone's eyes. These were always there, but pain clears the fog that once distracted you. You begin to live with greater attention, greater honesty, greater appreciation. Your conversations become more genuine. Your connections become more meaningful. You begin to see people not as roles or labels, but as fellow souls walking their own path through the fire of existence. Compassion takes root, not because someone told you to be kind, but because you felt the kind of pain that requires kindness to survive. Through pain, your ego begins to lose its grip. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop chasing approval, because the pain has already taken you to the bottom, and from there you realize the things you thought mattered so much were never the source of your peace. You begin to simplify, you begin to listen, you begin to let go. And in that letting go, something beautiful takes form, not in the form of external success or praise, but in the form of inner spaciousness. You begin to feel that you don't need to add more to your life to feel whole. You only need to be present for what already is. Buddhism teaches that dukkha, suffering, is not something to be erased, but to be understood. The goal is not to eliminate pain, but to stop clinging to what causes it. And this shift in perspective changes everything. You no longer resist what you feel. You no longer fight against the flow of life. Instead, you allow pain to move through you, not to define you, but to cleanse you. You watch it rise and fall like a wave. You observe it as a passing visitor, not a permanent resident. And in doing so, you develop equanimity, the deep, unshakable calm that comes from knowing that nothing lasts forever. not even your suffering. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when you realize that pain is not the enemy. It is the signal that you are ready for a deeper truth. It is the voice calling you back to yourself, to your breath, to your awareness, to the present moment where healing begins. And as painful as it may be, there is something sacred in that moment. The moment you stop running and start listening. The moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to ask, what is this pain trying to teach me? Because pain always carries a message. It might be telling you that it's time to rest, that you've been carrying too much, that you've been silencing your truth, that you've stayed in something that no longer nourishes your soul, or that it's time to forgive, not for someone else's sake, but for your own peace. The message is never meant to shame you, it is meant to free you. Pain only becomes unbearable when we try to suppress it, ignore it, or resist it. But when we open ourselves to it with compassion, when we breathe into it with awareness, something begins to shift. The sharpness softens, the heaviness lifts. The pain, once seen as a curse, becomes the very force that initiates your awakening. And with time, you begin to realize that your greatest breakthroughs didn't come during the easy seasons. They came during the breakdowns, during the silence, during the nights when you cried alone, not knowing if anything would ever feel okay again. But you kept going, you kept breathing, you kept showing up. And that resilience, that quiet, steady endurance, is the proof that you were never broken, you were becoming. So no matter how much it hurts right now, remember this. Pain is not here to end you. It is here to introduce you to the version of yourself that you were always meant to become. A version that is wiser, softer, more awake. A version that sees clearly, loves gently, and walks through the world with grace. Pain may be the path, but awareness is the destination. And when you look back one day, you won't just remember the suffering, you'll remember how that suffering brought you back to life. 10. The path was never meant to be straight. It was meant to awaken you. We grow up with a quiet assumption that life should follow a straight line, that if we make good choices, stay disciplined, work hard, and follow the path set before us, everything will unfold in a neat and predictable way. We believe that success follows effort, that love follows loyalty, that clarity follows planning. And so we move forward with hope, building our lives like carefully drawn maps, expecting smooth roads, clear skies, and visible destinations. But then, inevitably, life veers. The straight road bends, the clear sky darkens, the map becomes useless, and we find ourselves in unfamiliar terrain, wondering where it all went wrong. But Buddhism teaches us something very different about the nature of the path. It teaches that the path is not linear, not neat, not controlled. It is winding, often unclear, filled with unexpected turns, detours, and moments where it seems like we're moving backward. But this is not a failure of the path, it is the very design of it. Because the goal of life is not to move in a straight line, it is to awaken. And awakening doesn't happen when everything goes according to plan. It happens in the mess, in the loss, in the rerouting. The path was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to transform you. When the road bends unexpectedly, our first instinct is often to resist. We panic, thinking we've taken a wrong turn. We question ourselves, judge our choices, and fear that we've ruined something important. But in truth, those very detours are often where the most essential learning takes place. They humble us, they bring us to our knees, they force us to let go of control, and it is in that surrender, not in the perfection of our plans, that we begin to wake up. Awakening is not a single event. It is not a sudden flash of enlightenment that erases all pain and replaces it with bliss. Awakening is a slow and often painful peeling away of illusion. It is the process of seeing things as they really are, not as we want them to be. And this clarity rarely arises on the straight road. It comes in the places where we feel lost, where our hearts break, where our identities fall apart, where we sit in silence with nothing left to cling to, and finally begin to see that we are not here to arrive somewhere. We are here to be present to every step, no matter where it leads. You may have expected to be further along by now. You may look at others and wonder why their lives seem to make more sense, why their paths appear straighter. But remember this: comparison is only possible when you measure your path by the illusion of someone else's destination. No one's life is a straight line. Everyone bends, everyone detours, everyone breaks and rebuilds. And the most awakened souls are not the ones who walked a perfect path. They are the ones who allowed life to change them again and again without closing their hearts. In Buddhist philosophy, even the idea of a destination is seen as a trap. The obsession with progress keeps us from experiencing the moment. We believe we will only be happy when we reach a certain place, when we have the job, the relationship, the peace, the health, the answers. But the truth is, there is no final arrival. There is only this moment, and then the next, and the next. The path is not something you find. It is something you walk, breath by breath, with full awareness, even when you don't know where it's going. Some of your greatest realizations will come not when you are succeeding, but when you feel lost. Not when everything is clear, but when you are forced to sit in uncertainty. Because it is in those moments that you are most awake. Awake to your thoughts, awake to your fears, awake to your longing. And most importantly, awake to the deeper truth that life is not meant to be figured out, it is meant to be lived. And living fully means embracing the curve of the road, even when it leads away from where you thought you were going. So if your path right now feels confusing, don't rush to fix it. Don't pressure yourself to understand everything. Sit with the not knowing. Let it teach you. Let it soften you. Let it pull you away from the illusion of control and into the practice of presence. The greatest journeys are not the ones with the fewest obstacles. They are the ones that awaken the deepest truths, the ones that open your heart, expand your soul, and shatter everything false so that what remains is real. Life does not follow your timeline, it follows your transformation. You may not see it now, but every bend, every delay, every loss, every unexpected change is serving your evolution. The path was never about efficiency. It was about wisdom. And wisdom doesn't grow in straight lines. It grows in the spiral, the journey that returns you again and again to yourself, each time with a little more clarity, a little more compassion, a little more peace. So let go of the need to make your path look like a perfect story. Let go of the shame that says you've failed because you've wandered. Let go of the belief that your life should have gone differently. And instead, hold your heart with tenderness and remind yourself of this. The path was never meant to be straight. It was meant to awaken you. And right now, even in your confusion, even in your doubt, even in your delay, you are waking up. You are exactly where you need to be. Stillness is not inaction. It is the highest form of wisdom. In a world that worships urgency, speed, and movement, stillness is often misunderstood. People are praised for how fast they move, how much they produce, how constantly busy they are. Rest is seen as laziness. Silence is mistaken for weakness. And stillness, true inner stillness, is often dismissed as inaction, as if it is the absence of life rather than the presence of something deeper. But within the heart of Buddhist teaching lies a quiet truth that contradicts the rush of the world. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the presence of wisdom. It is the still, clear lake into which life's truths gently reveal themselves. And without it, we cannot see anything clearly. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It is about doing one thing at a time, with your whole being. It is the discipline to pause when the world pulls you to react. It is the awareness to remain grounded when emotions rise like waves. It is the presence to observe your own mind without getting pulled into its storms. This is not weakness, this is mastery, because it is far easier to rush into reaction than it is to pause, breathe, and see the truth behind the moment. In fact, most of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our unconscious reactions to it. Stillness is what interrupts that cycle. It is the sacred pause that gives birth to clarity. Imagine a muddy pond. When the water is stirred, everything becomes cloudy. You cannot see the bottom, but when the stirring stops, when everything is allowed to settle, the mud begins to fall and the water clears. This is what happens in your own mind. When you are constantly moving, constantly speaking, constantly reacting, the mud of thought is stirred and swirled until you forget that the truth has been there all along, waiting beneath the surface. Stillness allows you to return to that clarity. It allows the distractions to settle. It allows the emotions to soften. And in that silence, you begin to see with the eyes of wisdom. This is why Buddhist monks often spend years in silent retreat, not to escape the world, but to deeply enter it. To enter it not through the noise, but through the quiet, because it is in silence that the heart speaks. It is in stillness that the Dharma, the truth of things, is felt, not as an idea, but as a living experience. Stillness does not mean that life stops. It means you move without being moved. It means you remain internally anchored, even when the outer world is in chaos. It is the strength to wait before you speak, to listen before you decide, to breathe before you judge. And in doing so, you create space for truth to arise naturally. Many people think that if they stop pushing, stop forcing, stop striving, they will fall behind. They fear that stillness will make them irrelevant. But what they don't see is that the most powerful movements often come from those who act from stillness, not from reactivity. Because stillness is where intuition lives. It is where deep wisdom emerges, wisdom that is not borrowed from books, but born from your own awareness. When you act from that space, your decisions are no longer reactions to fear or pressure. They are reflections of alignment. They come from a place of wholeness, not panic, and because of that, they are far more impactful. Stillness also teaches you patience, not the passive kind that waits with frustration, but the grounded kind that waits with peace. You begin to understand that not everything needs to be solved immediately. Not every question needs an answer today. Not every conflict needs your immediate response. Life, like the seasons, moves in cycles, and if you remain still, you can sense the rhythm of those cycles. You stop trying to force the blooming of a flower that is still forming underground. You stop digging up seeds to check their progress. You trust, you allow, you align, and in that alignment, things begin to unfold in their own time. You also begin to notice the beauty of life's smallest details, the sound of wind in the trees, the subtle movement of your breath, the quiet presence of another human being sitting near you. In stillness, you stop seeking stimulation and begin to savor presence. You become more attuned to what is already here, and in that attunement, you discover that so much of what you've been searching for outside, peace, connection, meaning, has always been waiting for you in the quiet space within. But cultivating stillness is not easy. It requires practice, discipline, sincerity. You must become aware of your habits, the way your mind jumps from thought to thought, the way your body tenses in discomfort, the way your voice rises when fear takes over. You begin to observe, not to judge, but to understand. And as you practice, you will stumble. You will forget. You will be pulled back into noise. But every time you return to stillness, you strengthen your inner foundation. You remind yourself that peace is not found when the world calms down. It is found when you do. Stillness also has the power to heal, because when you become still, you stop running. You stop avoiding the feelings you didn't want to face. And when those feelings rise, grief, regret, shame, You meet them with presence. You breathe through them. You sit with them. And slowly, they dissolve. Not because you forced them away, but because you allowed them to be seen. Healing is not always loud. Sometimes it happens in the quietest of spaces, in the space where nothing needs to be fixed, and everything is simply held in love. So if you find yourself overwhelmed, uncertain, or exhausted, pause. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Let everything else fall away for just a moment, and notice what happens. You may not find all the answers, but you will find yourself, and from there, everything else becomes clear. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is the essence of life. It is the ground from which clarity, love, wisdom, and presence grow. And in a world that has forgotten how to be still, your presence becomes a sanctuary. Your calm becomes a light. And your stillness, quiet, deep, and true, becomes the highest form of wisdom you can carry. You are not lost. You are becoming aware. There are moments in life when everything familiar slips away. The plans you made no longer inspire you. The goals you once chased feel hollow. The relationships that once anchored you begin to shift, and the roles you once played no longer feel like they fit. You wake up one morning and feel disconnected from the person you used to be. The path ahead is uncertain, and the path behind you feels like it belonged to someone else. In these moments, it's easy to say, "I feel lost." And that feeling, that aching sensation of floating in unfamiliar waters, can be terrifying. You want to go back to what you knew, but something deep inside tells you it's time to move forward, even if you have no idea where you're going. But here is what Buddhism gently reminds us. Feeling lost is not a sign that you've failed or wandered off course. It is often a sacred and necessary part of the journey, because in truth, you are not lost. You are becoming aware. You are waking up to a deeper truth. You are beginning to see that the old structures of your life, the old stories, the old patterns, can no longer contain the person you are becoming. And that sense of disorientation is not a mistake. It is a transition, a shedding, a sacred undoing of everything false so that something real can emerge. When you feel lost, it is often because your soul has outgrown the life you built around it. You are being invited to explore your inner world, not from a place of crisis, but from a place of curiosity. You begin to ask different questions, not "what should I do?" but "what truly matters to me now?" Not "what do they expect of me?" but "what do I feel called to become?" These are the questions that mark the beginning of awareness. And awareness is not always comfortable. It strips away illusions. It brings you face to face with your attachments, your fears, your unfinished stories. But in doing so, it also brings you back to yourself. The sense of being lost often arises when the ego can no longer hold on to certainty. When its usual anchors, titles, roles, routines, approval, begin to slip, it panics. It tells you that something is wrong, that you've gone off track, that you need to hurry back to what was. But your soul knows better. Your soul does not panic. Your soul knows that growth requires space, that sometimes the map must disappear so that you can learn to feel your way forward, that sometimes the destination must vanish so that you can discover the richness of the journey itself. When you are lost, you begin to slow down, you begin to notice, you begin to listen, not to the noise of the world, but to the quiet voice within. And that voice, though soft, is honest. It tells you what you've been avoiding. It reveals what you've been suppressing. It invites you to look at the parts of yourself that you've ignored in the rush to become someone else. This is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. And the discomfort you feel is not because you are broken. It is because you are breaking free. Buddhism teaches that we suffer not because we are lost, but because we cling to ideas, to identities, to expectations, to the illusion of control. And when life invites us to let go, the mind resists. It wants to hold on to the familiar, even if the familiar no longer brings peace. But the more you practice awareness, the more you begin to see that letting go is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new way of relating to yourself and the world. In this space, you start to realize that what you thought was emptiness is actually spaciousness, that what you thought was confusion is actually the clearing away of what no longer resonates. You may not know who you are becoming yet, and that's okay. Clarity does not always come in lightning bolts. Sometimes it comes in quiet realizations, in small shifts, in the simple act of saying no to what drains you and yes to what brings you alive, even if you don't fully understand it yet. Awareness is not about having all the answers. It is about learning to sit with the questions, to trust the unfolding, and to walk with presence, even when the road is invisible. This season of uncertainty is not a detour, it is not a failure, it is a sacred invitation to awaken, to look within, to meet yourself without the masks, to rediscover the truth that was buried beneath all the noise and pressure and performance. You are not here to become someone else's idea of success. You are here to remember who you are beneath all the layers, and sometimes the only way to do that is to lose your way, just enough to come home differently. So if you feel lost right now, take a deep breath. Do not rush to fix it. Do not rush to explain it. Sit with it. Honor it. Let it be your teacher. Let it show you where you are still holding on, where you are still hiding, where you are still betraying your own heart for the sake of being accepted or approved. Let it bring you back, not to your old self, but to your deeper self. And remember this, the path of awakening is not a straight line, it is a spiral. You will return to the same lessons again and again, but each time from a higher place of awareness. What once confused you will one day become clear. What once hurt you will one day become your source of strength, and what once felt like being lost will become the very ground on which your truest self began to rise. You are not lost. You are transforming. You are returning. You are remembering. And every step, even the uncertain ones, is leading you to a more honest, more peaceful, and more awakened version of yourself. Surrender is not giving up, it is trusting the flow of life. To the untrained mind, the idea of surrender sounds like weakness. It sounds like retreat, like failure, like admitting defeat. The world teaches us to always fight, to always push harder, to never let go. We are taught to take control, to strategize every detail, to chase outcomes with relentless effort. And when things don't go as planned, when the current of life moves in a direction we didn't expect, we resist. We tighten our grip. We try to force the river to flow the way we want. But the deeper teachings of Buddhism whisper a different truth. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not passive, it is powerful. And it is not about giving up on life, it is about giving in to life. Surrender is not about collapsing into hopelessness. It is not the act of saying, "I can't do this," with a broken heart. It is the sacred act of releasing your illusions of control and trusting that life is intelligent, that the universe is unfolding in ways your mind cannot yet understand. It is choosing to stop swimming against the current, not because you are tired, but because you finally realize the river knows where it is going. In the practice of surrender, you are not stepping away from effort. You are stepping into alignment. You are aligning your actions, your breath, and your being with the greater rhythm of existence. And in that alignment, effort becomes effortless. Movement becomes graceful. Life becomes less about struggle and more about presence. In Buddhist teachings, there is a concept called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action. It doesn't mean you stop moving or that you do nothing. It means you act without force. You speak without resistance. You move in harmony with life instead of against it. Surrender is living from that space. a space where you are no longer reacting from fear, ego, or desperation, but responding with clarity, openness, and trust. When you surrender, you stop clinging to how things should be and begin to honor how things are. You no longer need to control every outcome because you trust that life is not punishing you, it is guiding you. But surrender does not come easily. The ego resists it at every turn. The ego believes that safety lies in control, in certainty, in holding tightly to plans, people, and timelines. It fears the unknown. It fears letting go, and so it pushes, it struggles, it fights to keep things from changing. But life, by its nature, is always changing. The seasons shift. The tides rise and fall, people grow and move on, bodies age, emotions flow, and when you try to hold life still, you suffer, not because life is cruel, but because you are clinging to what must evolve. Surrender is what happens when you stop trying to stop the river and instead learn to float with it, eyes open, heart open, trusting that it will carry you to where you are meant to be. Surrender also requires deep humility. It is the willingness to admit that you do not know everything, that your plans, no matter how carefully made, are not always what's best for your soul's journey, that the detour may be the path, that the unanswered prayer may be the real blessing, that the silence from the universe may not be rejection, but redirection. This humility is not self-defeating, it is liberating. It frees you from the exhausting burden of having to figure everything out. It allows you to sit in mystery without panic, to live with questions without needing immediate answers, to walk forward, not because you see the whole road, but because you trust the next step beneath your feet. And in this surrendered state, something incredible begins to happen. Life starts to flow, not always smoothly, but clearly. You begin to notice synchronicities, gentle signs, unexpected gifts. You meet the right person at the right time. You stumble upon the book that answers a question you didn't even know you had. You feel a sense of inner peace even when your outer life is uncertain. This is not magic, it is awareness. It is the natural outcome of living in harmony with what is, instead of resisting what is not. Surrender also softens the heart. It makes you more compassionate, more gentle, more open. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop needing to defend your identity or prove your worth. You stop needing to fix every situation. Instead, you begin to show up with presence, with grace. You listen more. You judge less. You become the calm in the storm instead of the storm itself. Because when you surrender to life, you no longer need to control people or outcomes to feel safe. You carry that safety within you, rooted in your own awareness, anchored in your own breath. But surrender is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Some days you will trust fully. Other days, fear will return, and you'll find yourself clinging again. That's okay. Surrender is not perfection. It is the gentle returning, again and again, to the wisdom that life is not something you have to conquer. It is something you get to dance with. You can release your grip and still be strong. You can let go and still care. You can surrender and still take action, action that is aligned, inspired, and free from desperation. If you are in a season of your life where nothing makes sense, where doors are closing, relationships are shifting, plans are falling through, remember that this may not be your collapse. It may be your clearing. Life may be clearing the space for something truer, something deeper, something you never would have chosen, but that is meant for you. You don't have to understand it yet. You don't have to like it, but you can surrender to it. You can soften into it. You can breathe through it and whisper to yourself, I trust, even now, even this. Because surrender does not mean you've failed. It means you've finally stepped out of the illusion that you were ever in control in the first place. It means you have begun to trust the intelligence of life more than the fear of your mind. And in that trust, you will find the deepest peace, not because life becomes easy, but because you are no longer fighting what is. You are allowing it to unfold, moment by moment, with grace. Surrender is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of ease, and it is the doorway through which your most awakened life begins to emerge, not through force, but through flow, not through fear, but through faith. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens every time you choose presence over pain. We often imagine healing as a destination, a final place we arrive at when all the wounds have been closed, when all the tears have dried, and when the ache inside our hearts has disappeared. We imagine that one day we will wake up and be whole again, that the past will no longer sting, that the memories will no longer carry weight, and that we will walk through life untouched by what once shattered us. But in the wisdom of Buddhism, healing is not a finish line. It is not an event. It is not something that happens in one glorious moment of release. Healing is a path, a process, a practice of returning again and again to presence, even when pain is still echoing in the background. Healing doesn't demand that your pain disappear overnight. It doesn't expect you to forget, to erase, or to pretend that what happened didn't happen. True healing is not denial. It is the courageous act of holding your pain with compassion, not letting it define you, but allowing it to be seen, felt, and understood. It is the moment you stop running, the moment you stop avoiding, the moment you pause and say, "This hurts, and I am still here." It's not about never breaking, it's about choosing to stay present in the midst of the breaking. It's about breathing through the waves instead of drowning beneath them. Pain is a powerful force. It calls for your attention. It pulls at your awareness. It rises in the body, in the breath, in the thoughts, sometimes without warning. But pain is not the enemy. It is a messenger. It is your body, your mind, your soul trying to speak, trying to be heard. The more we try to silence pain, the louder it becomes. The more we resist it, the more it persists. But when you meet it with presence, when you sit with it instead of pushing it away, it begins to soften. Not because it vanishes, but because it is finally allowed to be held. This is the root of healing. Not the elimination of pain, but the transformation of your relationship to it. In Buddhism, mindfulness is the medicine, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. When pain arises, mindfulness invites you to notice it without judgment, to say, "This is what is happening right now," and to anchor yourself in the breath, in the body, in the moment. Mindfulness is not numbness. It's not detachment in the cold sense. It is warm, open awareness. It is the act of remaining with what is, without tightening, without fleeing. And with every breath you take in presence, you create space around the pain. It no longer becomes the only thing you feel. You begin to notice that even in the pain, there is also breath. There is also stillness. There is also the sound of birds outside, the sunlight coming through the window, the way your heart continues to beat. Life continues, and so do you. Healing happens every time you make that choice. When you feel the urge to escape into distraction, into anger, into numbing, and instead you pause, you stay, you breathe, that is healing. When the same thought loops through your mind, the same memory plays like a broken record, and instead of believing the story, you observe it like a passing cloud, that is healing. When you notice your sadness but don't try to cover it with noise, when you let yourself cry without shame, when you give your heart permission to be tender, those are healing moments. They are quiet, they are small, but they are real, and they accumulate. Over time, they begin to shift the way your pain lives inside of you. The sharpness becomes gentleness, the chaos becomes understanding, the wound becomes wisdom. One of the most beautiful aspects of Buddhist philosophy is its deep patience. It does not ask you to rush. It does not measure your progress by how quickly you get over it. There is no timeline for awakening, no deadline for letting go. There is only now, and now, and now again. Each moment is another opportunity to return to breath, to body, to awareness, to the quiet truth that even in your pain, you are whole. Not broken waiting to be fixed, but whole even as you mend. Because healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering the wholeness that was buried beneath the hurt. We carry pain for many reasons. Some of it is from our childhood, when we didn't have the language or safety to process what we felt. Some of it is ancestral, passed down from generations of people who never had the chance to heal. Some of it is from this very life, loss, betrayal, failure, the sharp edges of impermanence cutting into our hearts. But whatever its origin, healing does not require that we trace every thread to its source. It only asks that we feel, that we allow the energy to move, that we make space for the emotion instead of stuffing it deeper inside. Emotions, after all, are energy in motion. They want to move. And when we let them, when we allow the tears to fall, the breath to tremble, the silence to speak, something shifts. The pain is no longer stuck. It begins to flow, and in that flow, healing begins. And yet, it is not always graceful. Sometimes healing looks like crying in the dark. Sometimes it looks like sleeping more than usual. Sometimes it looks like pulling away from noise, from people, from everything, just to feel yourself again. Sometimes it looks like starting something new, only to pause halfway through and question everything. All of this is healing. Not the shiny version people post online, not the inspirational quotes, but the real, raw, honest return to yourself, the slow unwinding of old pain, the tender gathering of scattered pieces, the quiet rebuilding of your own trust in life. There may be days when you feel like you've made no progress at all, days when the same wound hurts just as much as it did before. On those days, be gentle. Healing is not linear. It spirals. You return to the same lessons again and again, each time with a little more awareness, a little more strength. The same pain, but a different you, a more grounded you, a more patient you, a more present you. That is healing. So if you are in pain right now, if your heart still aches and your mind still circles the same sorrow, do not believe the voice that says you should be further along. Instead, return to presence. Return to your breath, to this moment. Because this moment is where healing lives, not in the imagined future where everything is perfect, but here, in the sacred space where you choose presence over pain, where you sit with what is, with love. And when you make that choice, even once, you are healing. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are becoming whole, breath by breath, presence by presence. Healing is not a place you reach. It is who you become every time you stay awake to what hurts and love yourself through it anyway. Freedom begins when you no longer need life to go your way. Most of us move through life carrying a quiet, unspoken contract with the universe. A belief that if we try hard enough, plan well enough, think positively enough, do the right things, love the right people, and follow the right path, then life will reward us by going the way we want. We cling to visions of how things are supposed to unfold, who we're supposed to become, who's supposed to stay, what's supposed to happen, and when. And we become so attached to these inner blueprints that any deviation from them feels like a personal failure or punishment. When life doesn't go our way, we suffer, not because of the events themselves, but because of our resistance to them, because of our insistence that they should be different. But Buddhism teaches something profoundly liberating. True freedom doesn't come from life matching your expectations. It comes from releasing the need for it to. It begins the moment you no longer require things to unfold in a particular way to feel peace inside your heart. That kind of freedom is not dependent on external circumstances. It arises from deep inner surrender. It is the kind of peace that walks with you even when the road disappears. It is the strength to remain open even when your plans collapse. It is the trust to keep breathing even when nothing makes sense. This is not passivity. It is power. The quiet power of someone who has made peace with the changing nature of life. You begin to realize that the source of your suffering was never the event itself, but your mental grip around how that event was supposed to be. You expected someone to stay, but they left. You expected your career to unfold with clarity, but it twisted in unexpected directions. You expected your body to remain strong, your mind to remain certain, your relationships to follow a clear arc, and when they didn't, you experienced heartbreak. But what if the heartbreak wasn't life being cruel? What if it was life being real? What if it was your own expectations that broke, not your heart? When you drop the belief that life must conform to your will, you begin to see that peace was always available to you, not in the control of external conditions, but in your relationship to them. You can still hope, you can still dream, but you no longer anchor your well-being to the fulfillment of those dreams. You become deeply rooted in something more stable than outcomes. You become grounded in awareness, in presence, in a deeper truth that does not rise or fall with circumstances. This is the beginning of freedom, when you stop resisting what is, not because you're indifferent, not because you don't care, but because you understand that peace does not require everything to be perfect. It only requires that you be present. When things don't go your way, you don't collapse. You breathe, you listen, you feel, you open, you ask, "What is life trying to show me here?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" You move from victimhood to participation, from resistance to acceptance, from clinging to allowing. And in that allowing, you discover that peace is not fragile, it is indestructible when it no longer depends on the fragile nature of form. One of the central teachings in Buddhism is that all things are impermanent, anicca. Your thoughts, your emotions, your possessions, your relationships, your beliefs, all of it is in a state of change. Nothing stays fixed. Nothing can be held forever. And the attempt to hold it, to freeze it in place, is what causes suffering. Freedom arises not when things last forever, but when you let them change and love them anyway. It is not about detachment in the cold sense. It is about intimacy with what is here, now, without trying to trap it or make it serve your ego's script. When you no longer need life to go your way, you become spacious. You walk through the world without tension in your chest. You stop micromanaging every detail. You begin to move with the current, not against it. You still have intentions, but you are not enslaved to them. You still make plans, but you are not destroyed when they shift. You still care deeply, but you are no longer defined by what you cannot control. This is real power, the kind of power that radiates through stillness, the kind of power that stays calm in the storm, not because it can stop the storm, but because it no longer fears the wind. You become soft, but not weak. You become fluid, but not aimless. You learn the art of listening to your own heart, to the needs of the moment, to the wisdom that life is always whispering beneath the noise of your mind. And as you listen, you begin to see that what you thought were disappointments were really redirections. What you thought were losses were really clearings. What you thought were endings were really beginnings in disguise. You begin to look back on your life and realize that the moments that hurt the most were the moments that taught you how to let go, how to stay awake, how to live without guarantees. And you carry that wisdom forward, not as a shield, but as a gentle knowing that nothing needs to go your way in order for you to walk in peace. You are free because you are no longer trying to control the flow. You are flowing with it. This does not mean you no longer care about your dreams, your goals, your relationships. It means you no longer make your happiness depend on them. You hold them lightly. You love without gripping. You work without forcing. You live with presence, knowing that every moment is complete in itself, not because it gives you what you want, but because you are awake to it. You are in it. You are with it. And that is enough. So if life is not going your way right now, pause, breathe. Notice the part of you that's tightening, gripping, demanding that things be different. Notice the story your mind is telling, the shoulds, the musts, the fears of being behind. And then gently ask yourself, what if I didn't need this to go a certain way? What if I could meet this moment exactly as it is? What if peace is not in the outcome, but in my ability to remain open within it? Because this is the heart of the path, learning to be fully alive in every twist and turn of your journey. And when you no longer need life to go your way, you discover a kind of freedom that nothing can take from you. The freedom to be at home in yourself, the freedom to love what is, the freedom to walk forward with empty hands and a full heart. This is the freedom of the awakened one, not the freedom from pain or uncertainty, but the freedom from resistance. The quiet, unshakable peace that comes when you finally stop needing life to match your plan and start trusting it to lead you somewhere far more real. You do not have to be fixed, you only have to be fully seen. From the moment we are born, the world begins to shape us. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our sense of worth. We are taught how to speak, how to act, how to succeed, how to be acceptable. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin to form an inner script that says, I am not enough yet. We begin to believe that we are only worthy when we achieve something, when we behave a certain way, when we are approved of, liked, admired, flawless, and when we fall short, when we feel anxious, when we fail, when we break, when we bleed, we believe that something is wrong with us, that we are broken, that we need to be fixed. But Buddhism gently offers a different vision, a vision that cuts through the noise of self-judgment and opens the door to a more radical truth. You do not have to be fixed, because you were never broken. You were never meant to be perfect in the way the world defines it. You were meant to be whole, raw, tender, evolving, breathing, aching, healing. And more than anything, you were meant to be seen, not as a performance, not as an image, but as you are, fully, softly, without defense. To be seen is to be held in the light of awareness, not analyzed or corrected. In Buddhism, awareness is the first doorway to compassion. It is the act of simply being with what is, without needing to control it, change it, improve it, just to see, to observe, to witness the truth of a moment, a feeling, a thought. When we practice mindfulness, we are not trying to fix our thoughts. We are simply seeing them. We are not erasing our emotions. We are holding them gently. We are not forcing ourselves to be calm. We are resting in the breath as it is and letting calm arise on its own. This is the true medicine, presence without pressure. So much of our suffering comes not from the pain itself, but from the belief that we shouldn't feel it, that we should be over it, that we should have healed by now, that we should be happier, stronger, more together. But what if there is nothing wrong with your sadness? What if your grief is not a flaw to be fixed, but a natural response to something precious being lost? What if your anxiety is not a weakness, but a signal that your nervous system is overwhelmed and needs compassion, not criticism? What if the parts of you you've been trying to hide are not shameful, but simply unacknowledged? And what if healing doesn't begin with fixing, but with finally allowing yourself to be seen? To be seen is to let the light touch the places you've kept hidden. It is the moment you stop pretending to be okay and say honestly, this is where I am right now. No mask, no filter, just truth. And in that moment of truth, something shifts. The burden of pretending drops. The need to impress disappears. You begin to breathe differently, slower, deeper, more freely. And you realize that maybe you don't need to be fixed. Maybe you just need to be met with kindness, with gentleness, with space. This is the power of presence. When someone truly sees you without agenda, without judgment, it heals something in you that no words ever could. You feel less alone, less fractured, less afraid. And when you learn to offer that same presence to yourself, the healing deepens. You become your own witness, your own safe space. You begin to look inward, not to critique, but to care. To listen to your own pain the way a mother would listen to a crying child. To say, I see you, I hear you, I'm not going anywhere. And slowly, you begin to feel whole again. Not because the pain has vanished, but because you are no longer abandoning yourself in the middle of it. You are staying, you are breathing, you are seeing all of you, not just the parts that feel presentable, but the trembling parts, the confused parts, the angry parts, the lonely parts. And in that sacred seeing, those parts begin to relax. They begin to trust. They no longer need to scream for your attention because you are finally listening. Buddhist practice reminds us that awareness is curative in and of itself. When we sit in meditation, we are not striving for peace. We are not trying to become enlightened. We are simply being with what is, with our breath, with our body, with our wandering mind, with our aching heart. And we observe it all with gentle attention. That attention, pure, steady, and non-reactive, is what transforms us. It does not fix us. It frees us. It returns us to our wholeness by reminding us that we were never incomplete to begin with, only unseen. And in this truth lies great relief. You no longer need to achieve a version of yourself that meets some external ideal. You no longer need to keep editing your soul to be lovable. You are not a project. You are not a machine. You are a living, breathing mystery. A field of awareness through which emotions pass, thoughts arise, stories unfold. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to feel all the things the world told you to suppress. And in that freedom, healing happens, not because you forced it, but because you stopped fighting yourself. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be present, to be real, to be human, to walk the path of awakening not as a polished statue, but as a humble being who is learning, forgetting, and remembering again. And on this path, every time you choose to stay with yourself, every time you choose compassion over critique, softness over shame, breath over blame, you are choosing freedom. You are choosing love. You are choosing to honor your true nature. You do not have to be fixed. You only have to be fully seen. And that begins with you. The more you let life be, the more life lets you in. We spend so much of our time trying to shape life into what we think it should be. We chase goals, fix problems, seek answers, build identities, and carry a constant inner tension that whispers, "This is not enough yet. You are not enough yet. Something needs to change before peace can arrive." And so we become restless architects of control, tightening around discomfort, pushing away what we don't like, clinging to what we do, resisting what doesn't match our idea of how things are supposed to go. We treat life like a project to manage rather than a mystery to enter. But the more we try to force life into our own image, the more exhausted we become. Buddhism invites us to consider a radical shift in perspective. What if the path to peace is not found in controlling life, but in letting it be? What if freedom is not in mastering every detail, but in releasing the belief that you have to? What if the deepest wisdom is not about fixing or perfecting, but about allowing, accepting, and softening into what is? Letting life be does not mean giving up. It doesn't mean passivity or apathy. It means loosening the grip. It means softening the voice in your mind that constantly evaluates, judges, plans, and resists. It means stepping out of the war with the present moment and into a more spacious, generous relationship with reality. You begin to realize that life is not your enemy to conquer. It is not your puzzle to solve. It is not your performance to perfect. Life is your companion, unfolding moment by moment, breath by breath, always offering you an invitation to be fully here. When you let life be, something opens, not outside of you, but within. A door in your chest that was once tightly shut begins to ease open. You begin to feel more, see more, receive more. You become available to life. Not just the pleasant parts, but all of it. The silence, the stillness, the sadness, the joy, the confusion, the awe. You realize that none of these things were ever the problem. It was your resistance to them that created the suffering. It was the internal tightening, the inner fight, the demand for something else. That's what weighed you down. But when you stop pushing life away, life begins to flow through you in a new way. It begins to breathe in your lungs, move in your body, speak in your intuition. This openness is not passive. It is deeply alive. You stop reacting and you start responding. You stop performing and you start participating. You meet life with a kind of sacred curiosity, asking not, "How can I change this?" but "What is this showing me?" You begin to see that everything, even the hard moments, carries wisdom, that every person, every challenge, every delay, every silence is part of the unfolding. And the more you allow that unfolding to happen without resistance, the more gracefully you move through it. This doesn't mean you never take action. It means your actions are no longer driven by fear or desperation. They come from a place of alignment. You act, not to force an outcome, but to honor your truth in the moment. You no longer try to control every variable. You trust that your role is to show up fully and let life take care of the rest. This shift brings a profound sense of ease. The weight falls from your shoulders. The tension leaves your jaw. You start to feel the rhythm of life again, and you begin to dance with it, not with stiffness, but with surrender. Letting life be also means letting yourself be. You stop holding yourself to impossible standards. You stop demanding perfection before you allow love in. You realize that being human is not something to hide. It is something to honor. Your flaws, your emotions, your uncertainty, they don't need to be fixed. They need to be seen. They need to be allowed. And when you allow them, you begin to experience a new kind of compassion, not just for yourself, but for everyone. You begin to recognize that everyone is doing their best, that everyone is carrying something, and that the most healing thing you can offer is not advice, but presence. Buddhism teaches that when we stop grasping and pushing, when we let go of craving and aversion, we return to our natural state, open, awake, loving, free. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means you no longer make your peace dependent on ease. You learn to rest in the middle of the storm. You learn to trust the wisdom of impermanence. You learn to see that the river of life does not need your control. It needs your trust. And the more you let life be, the more life begins to let you in. It reveals its beauty, not in grand events, but in quiet details. The way the wind touches your skin, the way sunlight filters through leaves, the way someone looks at you with kindness, the way a tear falls and you realize you're still here, still feeling, still alive. These moments were always here, but now you are here too, fully, softly, without armor. Letting life in means living from the heart, not the head. It means leading with presence, not performance. It means trusting that you don't have to have all the answers to be at peace, that you can sit in the unknown and still feel held, that you can walk forward, even in darkness, knowing that you are walking with life, not against it. So take a breath and let it be. Let life be uncertain. Let yourself be imperfect. Let this moment be enough. And watch what opens when you stop trying to open it. Watch what softens when you stop trying to fix it. Watch what returns when you stop chasing it. Because the more you let life be, the more life lets you in. Not as a visitor, but as a participant. as someone who belongs, as someone who no longer needs life to bend because you have finally learned to bend with it. And in that softness, in that allowing, in that surrender, you are finally free. Peace doesn't come from escaping life, but from entering it fully. There is a common longing in the human heart, an ache to be free from suffering, to find a space untouched by noise, untouched by pain, untouched by the weight of living. We dream of quiet gardens, of distant mountaintops, of peaceful havens where life finally makes sense. And so, in our moments of overwhelm, we imagine that peace lies somewhere else, somewhere beyond the chaos, beyond the stress, beyond the demands of daily existence. We begin to seek escape. We chase vacations, distractions, silence, solitude, and sometimes even numbness. But the more we chase peace outside of life, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. Buddhism offers a different doorway. It teaches us gently again and again that peace is not found by escaping life. It is found by entering it completely, not with resistance, not with judgment, but with full awareness, with presence, with the willingness to be with things as they are, not as we wish they were. This kind of peace is not passive. It does not float above the world. It walks with it. It breathes within it. It lives in the heart of experience, in joy, yes, but also in sorrow, in laughter, but also in stillness, in beauty, but also in pain. Peace is not something we run to. It is something we uncover when we stop running. The mind often tells us that peace can only exist in certain conditions. When the house is quiet, when the job is secure, when the people around us are kind, when our body feels strong, when our thoughts are calm. But these conditions are fragile. They shift like the weather, and if our peace depends on them, we become fragile too, pulled in every direction by the ever-changing tides of life. True peace cannot be built on such instability. It must come from something deeper, something steady, something unshakable. That something is presence. Presence is the art of entering this moment fully, not half-heartedly, not with one foot in the past and one foot in the future, but with your entire being. It is the decision to be here, now, even when the now feels uncomfortable. It is the courage to feel your emotions without pushing them away, to sit with your thoughts without needing to fix them, to breathe through your pain without numbing it, to walk through your day not as a checklist, but as a living experience. And in doing so, you begin to notice something profound. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of awareness within them. Think of the eye of a storm, calm, still, quiet, even as the winds swirl around it. This is what awareness gives you. It allows you to remain rooted even when life feels chaotic. It allows you to watch your thoughts instead of being swept away by them. It allows you to feel your feelings without drowning in them. This doesn't mean you no longer feel pain. It means you are no longer defined by it. You create space around the pain. You see it. You hold it. You breathe with it. And somehow, in that sacred holding, the pain begins to shift. Not because you fought it, but because you stayed. Peace is not about having no emotions. It's about having room for all of them. It's not about escaping relationships. It's about meeting people with presence. It's not about eliminating discomfort. It's about sitting with discomfort without abandoning yourself. And over time, you begin to realize that the place you were running from, the messiness, the rawness, the realness of life, is the very place where peace was waiting all along. In the practice of Buddhist meditation, we are invited to sit not to escape life, but to taste it more deeply. We do not sit to silence the mind by force, but to become intimate with it, to watch its habits, its fears, its stories, and to meet them with kindness. We do not seek to float away into bliss, but to descend more fully into the body, into breath, into now. Because the moment we stop chasing an ideal version of peace and instead meet the truth of this moment with open awareness, something sacred opens. A quiet steadiness, a gentle clarity, a sense of wholeness that does not depend on circumstances. Even suffering begins to look different. We no longer see it as a mistake to be erased, but as a teacher to be heard. We ask not, how can I get away from this, but what is this showing me? And in that question, we shift from avoidance to wisdom, from fear to understanding, from escape to embodiment. And that shift is where real peace lives, not on the mountaintop, but in the center of your life. Peace is in the way you drink your tea without rushing, in the way you feel the sun on your face without needing to document it, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you listen without planning your reply, in the way you let a single breath anchor you back into your body. These moments may seem small, but they are holy, because every time you choose to enter your life instead of escaping it, you are honoring the sacred nature of being alive. So if you find yourself tired from running, from chasing, from managing and controlling, rest, not by stepping away from life, but by stepping into it differently, with more gentleness, with more curiosity, with more surrender. You don't need a new life to find peace. You need a new way of being with the life you already have. Not a way that fixes everything, but a way that sees everything clearly, feels it deeply, and responds with presence. Enter your life, not later, not when things are perfect. Now, because peace is not waiting at the end of this path. It is the path. It is found in your choice to show up fully right here, to see, to breathe, to be. And in that being, peace is not something you find, it is something you become. The moment you stop resisting is the moment you begin to heal. Healing doesn't begin the moment you fix everything. It doesn't begin the moment you finally figure it all out or make the pain disappear. Healing begins in a much quieter, subtler place. It begins the moment you stop fighting what is. The moment you release the grip you've been holding so tightly around your pain, your story, your expectations, and your need for life to be anything other than it already is. That is the sacred turning point. Not the fixing, but the softening. Not the breakthrough, but the allowing. Because the moment you stop resisting is the moment your healing begins. Buddhism teaches that suffering is not created by pain alone. It is created by our resistance to pain. The pushing, the tightening, the mental and emotional battle against reality. We think, this shouldn't be happening. This feeling is too much. I need to get out of this. I can't handle this. And in that moment, we split ourselves in two. The one who is experiencing the pain and the one who is trying to escape it. That split creates friction, and friction becomes suffering. But when we stop resisting, we become whole again. We return to ourselves, not in ideal conditions, but right in the middle of the storm. Resistance comes in many forms. Sometimes it looks like denial, pretending everything is fine when it's not. Sometimes it shows up as distraction, keeping ourselves endlessly busy so we don't have to feel. Sometimes it hides behind perfectionism, trying to fix ourselves before we allow love or rest or forgiveness in. And sometimes it looks like anger, like bitterness, like emotional armor we've built to keep life from touching the wounded parts of us. But all of it is resistance, and all of it keeps us from healing. To stop resisting does not mean we approve of what hurt us. It does not mean we welcome injustice, trauma, or betrayal. It means we stop trying to fight what has already happened. We stop feeding the story that we can't move forward until everything is explained, resolved, or made right. We begin to say, this is what is here. This is what I feel. This is what I carry. And in that recognition, in that brave turning toward the truth of our own experience, we begin to breathe again. Not because it suddenly stops hurting, but because we are no longer making it worse by saying it shouldn't hurt. Buddhist meditation teaches us to sit with our experience exactly as it is, not to change it, but to witness it, to sit with our restlessness without running, to breathe with our sadness without numbing, to allow the wave of anger to rise and fall without acting on it. We learn that emotions are not the problem. Pain is not the problem. Resistance is the problem. The moment we say, "This should not be here," we create tension. But the moment we say, "This is what's here right now, and I choose to stay," we create space. And space is where healing begins. Embrace voluntary discomfort. It's how the mind becomes unbreakable. Modern life has done something dangerous to the soul. It has convinced people that comfort is the goal, that the easier life becomes, the better it is, that avoiding difficulty, numbing pain, skipping struggle, and softening the edges of every experience is how we arrive at happiness. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that too much ease creates weakness, that a mind untested becomes fragile, that a body unchallenged becomes soft, that a spirit shielded from adversity becomes directionless, that comfort, if worshipped, becomes a prison dressed like paradise. And so they practiced something powerful, something the modern world would call radical, voluntary discomfort. They deliberately stepped into difficulty, not to suffer pointlessly, but to prepare for life's inevitable storms. They understood that growth never comes from the path of least resistance, but from the path of chosen resistance. Voluntary discomfort is the discipline of walking into struggle on purpose, before life forces you into it. It's choosing to wake early when your body wants to sleep, choosing to fast when food is available, choosing silence when chaos tempts your voice, choosing simplicity when indulgence is within reach, choosing to do without, not because you have to, but because you understand that resilience must be trained. And it can only be trained through tension, through restraint, through doing what is hard when you could do what is easy, because that's when the mind begins to shift. That's when discipline moves from theory into reality. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, practiced this often. He would sleep on the floor for several nights, eat the simplest of meals, and wear rough clothing. Not because he was poor, but because he wanted to remind himself that he could endure poverty if it came. He said, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" It was a ritual, a psychological strengthening, a stripping away of false dependencies. Because when you voluntarily experience what you fear, it loses its power over you. You are no longer fragile. You are no longer shocked when life removes the things you once clung to, because you've already practiced letting go. And here's the truth that modern comfort culture hides from you. Real strength is not found in feeling good. It is found in doing what is necessary, even when it doesn't feel good at all. It is found in pushing beyond the surface desires of the body to reach the deeper goals of the soul. When you only do what's comfortable, you become a servant to your cravings. But when you deliberately practice discomfort, you become the master of your mind. You no longer fear challenge, you welcome it. You no longer run from adversity, you use it. And in this process, you begin to discover a version of yourself that is quieter, stronger, and far more capable than the one comfort had built. This isn't about punishing yourself. It's about preparing yourself. It's about building a kind of quiet readiness, not just for physical hardship, but for emotional, mental, and spiritual storms. Because the truth is, life will bring discomfort. You will lose people. You will face setbacks. You will walk through periods of isolation, uncertainty, grief, and resistance. And if you have lived a life avoiding all difficulty, these moments will crush you. You'll break, not because life is too hard, but because you are too soft. The Stoic prepares in peace for the battles of the future. They don't wait for the storm to begin building a shelter. They build it now, brick by brick, every time they say no to temptation, every time they sit in silence instead of speaking from anger, every time they fast, every time they delay gratification, every time they move toward resistance instead of around it. This is how strength is built, not in emergency but in practice. And it's not just about survival, it's about expansion. When you voluntarily do what is difficult, your comfort zone doesn't just stretch, it breaks. And beyond that break, you discover capacities you didn't know you had. You discover a tolerance for discomfort, for simplicity, for silence, for endurance. You stop panicking when things don't go your way. You stop reacting when plans fall apart. You stop needing perfect conditions to act. Because you've already trained yourself to move forward through discomfort. You've practiced becoming unshaken. Voluntary discomfort also recalibrates your gratitude. When you choose to go without, you begin to appreciate the small things again. A warm bed, a nourishing meal, a quiet morning, a kind gesture. You stop taking comfort for granted. You stop needing more to feel full. You learn to find abundance in simplicity. And this is one of the deepest Stoic teachings, that what you think you need is often just what you've become attached to. And the only way to dissolve that attachment is to temporarily live without it, not in bitterness, but in power. You begin to say, I don't need this comfort to be myself. I don't need this convenience to remain calm. I don't need this external ease to feel strong inside. And that mindset becomes your freedom, because now no one can take your peace. You've trained your mind to adapt. You've trained your body to endure. You've trained your spirit to stay grounded, not because things are easy, but because you are no longer dependent on ease to function. This discipline separates the strong from the soft, not physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. The strong know how to sit with discomfort while the weak avoid it. The strong know how to hold a line when it hurts, while the weak collapse when pressure rises. The strong know that comfort, when taken too far, is just another form of seduction, a slow drift into mediocrity disguised as pleasure. And the strong refuse to be seduced. They choose the cold morning, the silent walk, the undistracted breath, the hard conversation, the long road, because they've seen what the easy road creates, and they want something deeper. So choose voluntary discomfort, not to suffer needlessly, but to suffer intentionally, to build resilience, to strengthen your will, to rise above dependence on ease. Don't wait for life to test you. Test yourself now. Fast, not because you lack food, but because you want to master your hunger. Walk in silence, not because no one will speak to you, but because you've learned to hear what matters without noise. Sleep on the floor, not because you've lost everything, but because you want to remember you can live with less and still feel full. Because one day, life will take something from you, a person, a status, a routine, a comfort. And in that moment, the question will not be, was life fair? The question will be, have you trained for this? And if the answer is yes, you will not panic. You will breathe. You will remember what you practiced. You will rise, not because you are lucky, but because you are ready. This is the Stoic way, the art of becoming stronger than circumstance. The discipline of walking into fire so you do not burn when life ignites around you. The quiet triumph of the man who chose discomfort so that nothing could make him bow. Master the space between stimulus and response. That's where your entire life is decided. In every moment there is a choice, a breath of space so brief it often goes unnoticed. Something happens. You are triggered, challenged, insulted, ignored, disappointed, blindsided, and in that instant your body prepares to react. Your heart rate changes, your muscles tighten. A story begins to form in your mind. And right there, in that flicker of awareness between what happens to you and what you do next, your life is shaped. The Stoics understood this space. They didn't just observe it, they trained in it, because they knew this is where your power lives, not in controlling the world, but in mastering that sacred pause. That moment between the event and your response is where your fate is determined. And until you master that space, you will live as a puppet to your emotions, a servant to your impulses, and a prisoner of reaction. Epictetus said it clearly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And yet, how often do we forget this? We act as if our emotions are mandates, not invitations. We act as if other people's behavior dictates who we become. Someone offends us. We snap back. A plan fails. We spiral. A door closes. We fall into despair. Without realizing it, we have handed over the keys to our inner life to everyone and everything around us. We are no longer living. We are constantly reacting. But reaction is not power. It is noise. And the Stoic path is the quiet art of stepping back, of reclaiming that space before the reaction, of asking not, how do I feel, but what does this moment require of me? This space is not easy to find. It requires training, because the body is quick, the ego is impatient, the mind is conditioned to defend, to explain, to protect itself, but the soul, the deeper self, it waits. It whispers. It speaks in stillness. And only when you pause, just for a breath, do you hear it. That breath, that pause, that conscious hesitation before reacting, that is the gateway to mastery. That is the place where wisdom can rise above emotion, where character overrides impulse, where you remember your values before you lose them in temporary anger. You must begin to cultivate this space deliberately. It starts in the smallest moments, when someone cuts you off in traffic, when your phone buzzes with bad news, when someone makes a passive-aggressive comment, when you feel the urge to defend, to snap, to retreat, to explain. Instead of responding immediately, pause, breathe, wait, step back, observe. Ask yourself, what am I really responding to? Is this about them or about something inside me? Will my response create peace or more chaos? This is not weakness, it is clarity. It is the discipline of holding back until your response aligns with your highest self, not your wounded self, not your impatient self, not your ego, but your grounded, stable, unshakable self. This pause is also the birthplace of freedom, because most people are not free. They are constantly reacting. Someone else's energy enters the room, and suddenly they are tense. Someone else is upset, and now they're walking on eggshells. Someone else disapproves, and they feel small. This is not peace. This is emotional slavery. But when you master the space between stimulus and response, you are no longer a puppet. You become the author of your actions. You no longer live in reflex. You live in reflection. And that reflection changes everything. You stop saying things you later regret. You stop acting out of pride or fear. You stop reacting to triggers that once controlled you. You begin to make choices, not just actions. You begin to respond with intention, with purpose, with alignment. And in doing so, you change the trajectory of your life, not all at once, but one breath at a time. Imagine the power of this skill. Imagine facing an insult and responding with silence, not because you're afraid, but because you've chosen peace. Imagine feeling anger rise within you, but instead of lashing out, you pause and let it move through you. You don't suppress it. You don't explode. You observe. You contain. You respond later with strength and calm. Imagine facing disappointment, and instead of spiraling, you step back and ask, what can I learn here? What's in my control? What does resilience look like right now? This is the strength the Stoics lived by, and it made them untouchable, not because life didn't hurt them, but because life didn't rule them. This space between what happens and how you respond to it becomes your spiritual dojo. It is where you train, not in comfort, but in presence. Every time you choose to pause instead of react, you are strengthening that space. You are making it wider, more accessible, more natural, and over time, this space becomes your refuge. You no longer fear your emotions. You feel them without becoming them. You honor them without being hijacked by them. You let them rise and fall without building your identity on top of them. In this way, you no longer react to life. You collaborate with it. You walk into the world no longer fearing what might happen, because you know, whatever comes, I can choose how I meet it. This is the source of true confidence, not in predicting the world, but in mastering yourself, not in controlling events, but in controlling your relationship to them. And make no mistake, there will be moments that test this practice, moments that hit you when you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, when your heart is raw. You will feel the pull to lash out, to run, to numb, to collapse. But in that moment, the voice will come. Pause, breathe, wait, choose. And if you've trained, if you've practiced, the gap between stimulus and response will be wide enough to hold your dignity, your clarity, and your highest intention. The Stoics didn't promise an easy life. They promised a powerful one, and that power lives in the moment between trigger and response, in the breath before the words, in the stillness before the action, in the pause that reclaims your soul from the fire of impulsivity. So practice it, honor it, train in it every single day, because your peace, your power, your presence, they all live there, in that tiny, invisible, sacred space between what happens and who you choose to be. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. There is a kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with physical labor and everything to do with emotional energy. It's the tiredness that creeps in after too many conversations where you had to defend your decisions, explain your silence, justify your boundaries, or convince someone that your growth was not an attack. This kind of fatigue is spiritual. It drains your joy, clouds your mind, and leaves you doubting your own path. Not because you're lost, but because you're surrounded by people who don't want to understand you. And that is where this lesson begins. Stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. There is a difference between someone who doesn't understand you and someone who refuses to. One is rooted in curiosity, the other in ego. One listens to learn, the other listens to respond. One asks questions because they want to see you clearly. The other asks questions only to find flaws in your answers. The Stoics knew this danger well, the trap of defending yourself to the wrong audience. Epictetus taught, if someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against their accusations. Respond only if it is beneficial, otherwise let it go. This is not passivity, it is wisdom, because some people are not confused. They are committed to their version of you. They have built a story about who you are, what your silence means, what your strength threatens, what your boundaries cost them. And no matter how gently or clearly you speak, they will twist your words to protect their illusion. The more you grow, the more you'll encounter this. Your elevation will irritate those who can't control you anymore. Your peace will provoke those addicted to chaos. Your boundaries will offend those who benefited from your lack of them, and your silence will be misread by people who need your energy to validate their noise. And when this happens, your instinct might be to explain, to try and bridge the gap with clarity. But this is where you must pause and ask, will this explanation serve peace? Or am I just bleeding truth into a cup that was never meant to hold it? Because not everyone deserves your explanations. Not every conflict deserves your energy. Not every conversation is meant for healing, and some people will never hear your truth because it would destroy the version of reality they're clinging to, and so they will resist it, not logically, but emotionally. They will mock your silence, reject your wisdom, challenge your growth, and call your strength coldness. But their reaction is not your responsibility. And the moment you begin to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you begin to abandon your own clarity just to walk into their confusion. The Stoics urge us to conserve our inner energy like a sacred flame. Every time you explain yourself to the wrong audience, you dim that flame, you scatter it. You begin to shape your words not by what is true, but by what is palatable. You start to edit your actions not according to your values, but according to what might be accepted. And in doing so, you hand over your peace in exchange for the illusion of harmony. But real peace is not built on over-explaining. It is built on alignment, on walking your path with clarity even when others don't clap, on standing in your truth even when others don't understand it, on knowing that your soul's instructions are between you and God, not you and the crowd. So, how do you live this out? You start by paying attention to where your explanations are going. Ask yourself, is this person truly seeking to understand me, or are they seeking to control how I show up? Are they listening with their heart, or are they waiting for me to give them something they can twist? Will this explanation open a door, or will it drain me while the door stays closed? If your answer leans toward confusion, resistance, manipulation, or drama, stop. Protect your clarity. Return to your stillness. You owe no one an explanation for healing, for growing, for protecting your peace, for saying no, for being silent, for choosing differently. This doesn't mean you become cold or withdrawn. It means you become intentional. You stop feeding your truth to those who chew it just to spit it back. You stop handing your insights to those who use them as weapons. You stop walking into debates with people who don't even see you clearly. And instead, you reserve your energy for those who have earned your explanation, those who ask with kindness, who listen without judgment, who reflect before reacting. These people are rare, but when you find them, you'll know, because with them, you won't have to explain yourself just to be respected. You'll be met, not managed. You'll be seen, not dissected. You'll be heard, not judged. The Stoic path is not about isolation, it's about sovereignty. It's about knowing when to speak and when to be still, when to engage and when to walk away, when to explain and when to let silence speak for you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In the same way, the best response to being misunderstood is not to beg for clarity. It is to continue your life with quiet dignity, to let your actions speak, to let your consistency prove what your words could never convince, to let your peace become a shield so impenetrable that no misunderstanding can pierce it. Eventually, those who were meant to see you will. Those who were never meant to walk with you will fall away, and your explanations, they will become unnecessary. Because your life will speak louder than your defense. Your integrity will shout over their confusion, and your peace will whisper louder than their noise ever could. So stop explaining. Start embodying. Let your stillness explain what your voice never should have had to. And walk quietly, boldly, freely, because you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. And that is explanation enough. Your peace is too expensive to spend on every situation. Guard it like it's sacred. There comes a time when you realize something profound. Your peace is not just a luxury, it is your responsibility. It is not an accessory to wear when the world is kind. It is a sanctuary to protect when the world is cruel. In a society that glorifies opinions, reactions, drama and noise, holding on to your inner calm is no longer just self-care. It's rebellion. And the Stoics knew this centuries ago. They understood that peace is not what happens around you. It's what you preserve within you, even while the storm rages outside. And so they lived by a principle most have forgotten. Your peace is too expensive to be spent on every situation. Think about how easily people give their peace away. One rude comment ruins their entire day. One unexpected delay triggers a spiral of frustration. One misunderstanding pulls them into hours of overthinking. One person's rejection steals their joy, confidence, and focus. And slowly, day by day, they hand over the keys to their mental state to whoever has the loudest energy or the sharpest tongue. And this is how most people live, reactively, emotionally, vulnerably exposed to every external ripple. But the Stoic doesn't live like this. The Stoic builds a fortress inside, not made of walls, but of discernment. They do not shut the world out. They simply decide what is worth letting in. Because not everything deserves your reaction. Not every situation deserves your opinion. Not every insult deserves your time. Not every person deserves access to the most sacred parts of you. Your peace is not public property. It is your soul's sacred garden. And if you do not guard it, the weeds of the world will take over. They will choke your clarity. They will poison your joy. They will pull you into petty battles that rob you of your strength. And all it takes is one moment of unconscious reactivity, one moment where you forget that you can choose not to engage. Imagine peace as your most precious currency. Would you spend your last coin on someone who doesn't value it? Would you throw your treasure into a fire just because someone called you weak? Would you hand over your calm to someone who thrives on chaos? And yet we do it all the time. We enter arguments just to prove we're right. We respond to disrespect just to protect our pride. We seek revenge thinking it will restore what was taken. But all it does is bankrupt us internally. It drains our focus. It derails our growth. It keeps us entangled in energy that was never ours to carry. Seneca wrote, "What progress have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." And being a friend to yourself means protecting yourself from self-inflicted harm. Overreacting is a form of self-harm. Pleasing everyone is a form of self-harm. Engaging in drama just to feel seen is a form of self-harm, because it chips away at your center. It teaches you to be reactive, not reflective. It convinces you that your worth depends on how quickly you can defend it. But the Stoic knows your worth is not something you shout, it's something you know. And when you know it, you no longer need to explain it to everyone who doubts it. Protecting your peace means getting comfortable with silence. It means letting people be wrong about you and not rushing in to correct them. It means walking away from conversations that go nowhere. It means choosing stillness over speed, presence over performance, solitude over noise. It means recognizing that your energy is limited, and what you spend it on, you multiply. Feed conflict, and conflict grows. Feed anxiety, and anxiety spreads. Feed silence, and peace expands. And here's the hardest part. Protecting your peace often looks like losing. It looks like walking away from the argument while others accuse you of being weak. It looks like declining invitations to drama while others call you detached. It looks like not responding to every message, not attending every battle, not joining every debate. But what looks like weakness to the world is strength to the soul. Because it takes incredible restraint not to react when everything in you wants to. It takes maturity to sit in silence while your ego burns to be heard. It takes wisdom to realize that protecting your inner world is more important than proving a point in the outer world. Marcus Aurelius put it best when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is the Stoic map to peace. And every time you remember it, you rise above the pull of distraction. You stop trying to fix everything. You stop trying to win everyone's approval. You stop trying to force life to obey your plans. You breathe. You accept. You observe. You choose wisely where your energy flows. And this is not giving up, it's waking up. So ask yourself, where am I spending my peace carelessly? Who am I trying to impress or defend myself to? What battles am I entering that do not serve my higher self? When you answer these honestly, you'll begin to see the leaks. And once you see them, you can seal them. You can begin again, not by controlling the world, but by choosing not to let the world control you. Your peace is sacred, not because it's rare, but because it's yours, and no one else can protect it for you. That is your task, your discipline, your calling. To wake each day and guard your mind like a warrior guards his sword. To know that not everyone deserves your thoughts, not every opinion needs a rebuttal, not every event requires your emotional investment. The world will try to distract you, to stir you, to pull you into its chaos, and you must be the calm in the center of that storm, not by shutting down, but by staying centered, by remembering that stillness is not the absence of motion, it's the presence of depth. So from this moment on, hold your peace like it's holy, spend it wisely, protect it fiercely, and when in doubt, choose the silence that nourishes your soul over the noise that empties it. Because no one will hand you peace, you must claim it, then protect it every single day. Detach from praise and criticism. Live by principle, not popularity. There is a kind of freedom that few people ever taste, not because it is rare, but because it is difficult. It's the freedom that comes when you stop being owned by praise and stop being destroyed by criticism. It is the kind of internal liberation that occurs when your identity is no longer chained to approval, compliments, applause, or likes. It is the peace that blossoms when your soul no longer rises and falls with public opinion, when your actions are rooted in values, not reactions, not recognition, not reputation. And in the world we live in today, a world addicted to validation, driven by visibility, and engineered for external applause, this kind of freedom is revolutionary and profoundly stoic. The Stoics understood that both praise and blame are shadows, echoes of perception, not truth, opinions, not reality. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." He wasn't just being poetic. He was diagnosing a sickness of the human mind, a sickness that trades inner knowing for outer applause, a sickness that asks, "Do they like me?" before asking, "Am I being honest with myself?" And this sickness is everywhere. It seeps into your daily life, silently. You post something and check how many people respond. You make a decision and immediately wonder how it will be perceived. You withhold your truth because you're afraid it might make others uncomfortable. And you begin to shape yourself, not around principle, but around perception. You begin to live not from within, but in reaction to everything outside you. And when that happens, you no longer live, you perform. You no longer act with clarity, you seek permission. You no longer walk your own path, you stagger between the opinions of others like a leaf in the wind. The Stoics would call this slavery. To be enslaved to what others think is to hand over your life, not just your actions, but your self-respect. Because when you depend on praise to feel valuable, you also become vulnerable to criticism. When your self-worth rises with compliments, it will inevitably collapse with judgment. You build a fragile identity, one that is constantly scanning for approval, adjusting to avoid rejection, and terrified of being misunderstood. But the Stoic path is not built on popularity, it is built on principle. The Stoic does not live to be admired, they live to be in alignment with virtue, with integrity, with their deepest convictions. Seneca said, "What you think of yourself is much more important than what others think of you." And he lived it. Despite being a senator and public figure, he knew the difference between fame and fulfillment. One feeds the ego. The other feeds the soul. Detaching from praise and criticism does not mean becoming numb or arrogant. It means becoming rooted, grounded, centered in something deeper than popularity. It means knowing that what is good, even if no one sees it. It means doing the right thing, even if no one claps. It means staying silent when praised and calm when blamed, because you know, my worth is not up for public auction. This is not easy, because we are trained from childhood to seek approval. We are taught to be good when others smile, to feel ashamed when others frown. We grow up hungry for validation, and that hunger becomes a habit. But Stoicism invites you to break that habit, not through rebellion, but through understanding. To realize that praise is not always a reward, and criticism is not always a punishment. That people's opinions are not always based on truth, but often on their own wounds, projections, and limitations, and that your peace cannot be placed in hands that do not even understand you. When you live by principle, you begin to see both praise and blame as weather. Sometimes the skies will be clear, people will like you, approve of you, compliment you. Other times the storms will come, misunderstandings, disapproval, rejection. But in either case, you are the mountain. You do not sway with the winds. You do not crumble with the rain. You do not lose yourself just because someone else can't see your worth. And here's the paradox. When you stop seeking praise, your actions become more sincere. When you no longer fear criticism, your courage increases. You speak with clarity. You walk with purpose. You live not to impress, but to express truth. And in that state, even your silence becomes powerful. Your presence becomes grounded. People may still praise or criticize you, but it no longer shakes your core, because your foundation is not external. It is built within. How do you build this foundation? You begin by becoming aware of where your energy leaks. Notice how you feel when someone compliments you. Do you rise too high? Do you feel the urge to perform more, to keep impressing? Notice how you respond to criticism. Do you shrink, defend, feel the need to explain or fight back? These reactions are signs of attachment. They are not signs of weakness, they are invitations. Invitations to go deeper, to ask, why does this matter so much? Where am I still outsourcing my identity? What principle am I forgetting in this moment of fear? And from there, you practice. You remind yourself daily, my worth does not depend on being seen. You meditate on the difference between admiration and integrity. You replace the question, do they like me, with, am I being honest with myself? You learn to walk away from conversations that are just disguised performances. You get comfortable with being misunderstood, because even the wisest were. You get familiar with silence, because even truth does not need to shout. Eventually, you reach a place where the applause fades, and you don't feel empty, where the judgment comes, and you don't feel shaken, where you no longer chase compliments or hide from criticism. You simply act, you move, you create, you speak, you walk, and in every step you are free, not because the world is quiet, but because your soul is. This is the Stoic ideal, to be a soul unbothered by opinion, to be a mind not pulled by popularity, to be a life rooted in virtue, not visibility. Because in the end, popularity fades, but principle, that is eternal. And the soul that lives by it will walk this world unshaken. Master the art of not taking things personally. What others say is a reflection of them, not you. There is an invisible prison that many people live in without knowing, the prison of personal offense. It is built not with walls or chains, but with assumptions, emotional wounds, and the deeply ingrained belief that everything others say or do is somehow about us. A strange look, a cold tone, a dismissive gesture, a single moment can spiral into hours of overthinking. We replay it, dissect it, assign meaning to it, and slowly it infects our peace, corrodes our confidence, and dims our spirit. But the Stoics knew better. They saw clearly that most of what people say and do reveals more about them than about you. And so they practiced something rare, something powerful. They did not take things personally. Imagine walking through a marketplace in ancient Rome. Crowds of people pushing, yelling, bargaining, gossiping. Some look at you with curiosity, others with contempt. Some praise you, others mock you. If you stop to react to every voice, you'll never make it to your destination. You'll be pulled into every argument, every whisper, every distraction. Marcus Aurelius knew this when he wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This wasn't denial, it was detachment. He understood that power does not come from controlling what others say, but from mastering how you receive it. Because what people say is filtered through their own fears, projections, histories, and insecurities. Their words are mirrors of their inner chaos, not judgments of your worth. A person who lashes out at you is often fighting battles you cannot see. A person who belittles you may be hiding from their own inadequacy. A person who mocks your dreams might be terrified of their own. But when you take it personally, you make their noise your truth. You absorb their poison as if it belongs in your bloodstream. And in doing so, you hand over your peace to people who may not even know what peace is. This is where the Stoic practice becomes essential, not as an intellectual exercise, but as emotional self-defense. To master the art of not taking things personally is to reclaim your mental sovereignty. It is to say, your opinion of me does not define me. Your anger is not mine to carry. Your judgment is not a mirror of my truth. Your disrespect is a reflection of your character, not a measurement of my worth. This kind of clarity is not passive, it is power in stillness. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this more true than when we misinterpret other people's behavior. Someone cancels plans and we think they don't value me. Someone doesn't reply to a message and we feel rejected. Someone offers constructive feedback and we feel attacked." These automatic stories are not facts. They are emotional habits. Habits we learned through years of equating our worth with how others treat us. But the Stoic unlearns this. They pause, they observe, they create space between stimulus and response, and in that space, they protect their peace. Not taking things personally also means letting go of the desire to always be understood. It means being okay with being misread, misjudged, or even disliked. Because your job is not to convince everyone of your heart. Your job is to live in alignment with it, and the more you grow, the more people will project onto you. They will see your strength as arrogance, your silence as disrespect, your boundaries as hostility. But remember, you are not responsible for the stories others create about you. You are only responsible for your integrity. This kind of detachment takes courage, because we are taught to care deeply about what others think. We are raised to be nice, to fit in, to keep everyone comfortable. But comfort is not the same as clarity, and kindness is not the same as self-erasure. The Stoic path is not about coldness. It is about discernment. It is about seeing clearly that your peace is worth more than your reputation in someone else's story. It is about choosing inner truth over external validation. It is about remembering that your emotional state is your responsibility, not a puppet on the strings of someone else's mood. So how do you begin to live this way? You begin by observing your triggers. Notice what comments shake you, what tones unsettle you, what silences make you question yourself. These are not signs of weakness. They are doorways to deeper awareness. Each one reveals where you are still tied to external approval. Each one shows where you still believe your worth is negotiable. And in that awareness, you begin the practice. the daily discipline of coming back to center. The next time someone criticizes you unfairly, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this about me, or is this about their story? When someone is cold or dismissive, ask, do I need to carry this energy, or can I let it pass through me like wind through an open window? When you feel offended, ask, what part of me is still seeking permission to feel valid? These questions are not for self-blame, they are for self-liberation, because the more you ask them, the more you loosen the chains of emotional reactivity, and slowly something shifts. You stop responding to every provocation. You stop defending yourself against every false narrative. You stop trying to fix how others see you. You stop reacting and you start observing. And in that stillness, you begin to experience a kind of peace that no insult can penetrate, a kind of strength that no judgment can shake, a kind of freedom that no opinion can take away. This is the freedom of the Stoic, to walk through the world untouched by petty noise, to love without needing to be loved back, to give without needing to be praised, to act without needing applause, to stand firm even when misunderstood, and to know in your deepest core that what others say is a story, and you are not required to play a part in it. So let them talk, let them twist, let them misunderstand, and while they do, you remain steady. Because you are not here to be edited by opinion, you are here to embody truth. And nothing personal needs to be taken when you already know who you are. Silence is a strategy, not surrender. The strongest response is often no response at all. There's a moment, quiet, weighty, and often overlooked, where someone says something cruel, condescending, or completely untrue. Your body tenses, your ego flares, your mind loads 100 sharp comebacks, perfectly worded, painfully precise. And in that moment, you face a decision far more powerful than most people ever realize. Do you react, or do you refrain? Do you pour your energy into the fire, or do you let the flame die in the wind of your silence? The Stoics believed that the strongest response is often no response. Not because you are passive, not because you are weak, but because you are free. You are free from needing to prove yourself, free from needing to win arguments, free from the exhausting dance of ego against ego, which always ends in spiritual debt. Silence for the Stoic is not an absence of power, it is the purest expression of it. Because to hold your tongue, to still your hands, to walk away without a word, is to master yourself in a world where most are mastered by impulse. Seneca once wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." This is not about avoiding truth, it's about wielding it wisely. Just because you know something does not mean you must say it. Just because you feel something does not mean it must be shown. Just because someone provokes you does not mean they deserve your energy. Words are not just communication, they are currency, and every time you speak, you spend. So ask yourself, is this worth the cost? When someone disrespects you, the world teaches you to respond quickly, loudly, and publicly. To defend your name, to fight for your pride, to match aggression with aggression, insult with insult, fire with fire. But that is not strength. That is insecurity in disguise. That is ego gasping for recognition. True strength is silent. It does not perform for attention. It does not flinch at false accusations. It does not dance to the rhythm of someone else's dysfunction. It observes, it breathes, it understands, and it walks away, not out of fear, but out of discipline. Because silence says everything that shouting cannot. It says, "You do not control me." It says, "I am not here to fight shadows." It says, "I choose peace over performance." In fact, nothing exposes the weakness of others more than your refusal to react. When you do not engage, you hold up a mirror to their behavior. They are left alone with their anger, their cruelty, their childish need for attention, and in your silence they hear the emptiness of their words. You give them no fuel, you give them no platform, you give them nothing, and nothing is devastating to those who seek chaos. But silence is not just a tactic for external situations, it is a tool for the inner world. Because when you learn to remain silent, you start to hear more. You begin to notice the subtle workings of your mind. You catch the ego mid-sentence. You spot the fear behind the anger. You hear the desperate craving for validation behind the need to set things straight. And in this awareness, you find your freedom. Because now, instead of being pulled by emotional reactions, you are anchored by intention. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Imagine the weight that would fall off your shoulders if you chose that more often. No opinion about what someone said behind your back. No opinion about a stranger's insult. No opinion about online chatter. Just a quiet space where your soul remains untouched, where your peace remains undisturbed, where your energy is protected like a sacred flame. You do not need to correct every lie. You do not need to confront every betrayal. You do not need to explain your silence, because those who truly understand you do not need explanations, and those who demand explanations will never understand you anyway. And what happens when you live this way? You become untouchable, not in the arrogant sense, but in the deeply spiritual sense. You become the person who cannot be baited into useless drama, the person who cannot be provoked into reactive chaos, the person who protects their energy with the ferocity of a warrior and the grace of a monk. Your life becomes quiet, not because it's empty, but because it's full of things that matter. Your presence becomes powerful, not because it's loud, but because it's grounded. This kind of silence doesn't just protect your peace, it magnifies it. It creates space. Space to think clearly, space to respond with purpose, space to focus on what truly matters. And slowly, you stop living in reaction to others. You stop wasting your days in argument and explanation. You stop bleeding your energy into places that never deserved it. You stop being owned by the chaos around you, and you begin to live, not just exist. But let's be honest, silence is not easy. It requires strength to bite your tongue when you're boiling inside. It takes wisdom to choose presence over performance. It takes maturity to not attend every battle you're invited to. And it takes deep self-worth to know that you don't need to be understood to be at peace. This is why silence is not a weakness. It is a daily discipline, a conscious choice, a muscle you build through practice and awareness, and the more you choose it, the stronger it becomes. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, not everything deserves a response. Not every moment requires your voice. Not every situation needs your presence. Ask yourself, will my words heal or harm? Will they bring clarity or confusion? Will they serve my higher self or just my wounded ego? And if the answer is unclear, say nothing. Let silence speak for you. Let time reveal what words never could. Let your peace become your loudest statement. Because silence is not surrender. It is strategy. It is mastery. It is choosing your highest self when your lower self is begging for attention. It is walking away, not because you're weak, but because your soul is strong enough to walk in stillness. And in that stillness, you will discover something the noisy world can never offer. Freedom, the unshakable, unbothered, unbreakable kind, the kind that lives in those who do not chase applause or argue with shadows, the kind that is built in silence and sustained by wisdom. Become the calm in the chaos, master your inner world, or be a slave to the outer one. There is a storm outside you, always. It takes many forms. Sometimes it looks like an argument. Sometimes it looks like betrayal. Sometimes it takes the shape of gossip, rejection, judgment, or pure noise, social media, breaking news, emotional outbursts, chaotic people. The world outside is a spinning wheel of voices and demands, and every single day that storm invites you to step into it, to fight it, to drown in it, to lose yourself trying to control it. But here's the Stoic truth. You can't control the storm. You can only control who you are in the middle of it. And that is the final lesson. If you do not master your inner world, the outer world will master you. The Stoics didn't teach escape. They didn't ask you to run into the mountains or retreat from life. They taught presence, clarity, control, not of others, but of self. They taught that the real battlefield is not in the street. It's in the mind. The real chaos is not what they say about you. It's what you say to yourself afterward. The real prison is not other people's opinions. It's your own fear of being misunderstood. And the real freedom is not found in silencing the world. It's in silencing the noise within. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, surrounded by constant tension, pressure, and betrayal. Yet he wrote not about controlling others, but about controlling thought. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Read that again. It is not just a quote. It is the foundation of emotional freedom. Because if your peace depends on what others say, you will always be owned by their moods. If your happiness relies on everything going right, you will always be anxious. If your self-worth rises and falls with opinions, you will never know who you truly are. That's why Stoicism teaches, build your peace from the inside. Let the world be loud. Your soul must stay quiet. Let people misunderstand you. Your clarity must remain firm. Let the winds howl. Your spirit must stand unmoved. Because when you become calm in the chaos, something sacred happens. You begin to rise above it, not in arrogance, not in cold detachment, but in silent strength, in grounded power, in wisdom that sees through the noise and no longer dances with every disturbance. How do you do this? You begin by realizing that not everything deserves a reaction. Not every invitation to fight is worth attending. Not every rumor needs a response. Not every insult requires defense. The moment you feel provoked, that's your signal. Not to speak, but to pause. That pause is sacred. It is where character is built. In that pause, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Is this worth my energy? Will this make me better or just more exhausted? And most importantly, what would my higher self do here? Sometimes the answer is to speak calmly. Sometimes it's to say nothing. Sometimes it's to walk away without looking back. The key is not the action. It's the intention behind it. Are you acting from wisdom or from wounded pride? From inner strength or from reactive emotion? Because the Stoic is not a robot. They feel everything, but they are not ruled by what they feel. They use emotion as information, not instruction. They choose their response deliberately. They act from the stillness they've cultivated, not from the noise they've absorbed.